After Knuckleduster rescues Koichi and Soga, who was turned into a monster by Queen Bee, he defeats and unmasks Stendhal, putting an end to his killing spree. But Hachisuka isn't done yet. Her trigger-filled bees are spreading chaos all over Narahata. Who will she target next? And can the Narahata Vigilantes stop her before it's too late? Let's find out. The school that Koichi Himawari attends was shown. Although he's a hero in his spare time, his real job is supposedly studying in college, so to speak. He was sleeping soundly at his desk while the professor announced that they would have a quiz on Chapter 3 of their textbook next week. So, they were told to make sure to review the material on their own time. The class was dismissed, and Koichi woke up when his classmates started to stand. Anyway, lately, he's been having difficulties with his real job or college. While in the canteen, he was eating and reading a book simultaneously. Someone suddenly approached him and asked if anyone was sitting beside him, to which he replied no. It was a woman who sat next to him and asked what he was reading, as he had been staring at the same page for a while. Koichi showed her the textbook from his hero sociology class and mentioned that it was written by their professor. He explained that he needed to study for their quiz. The woman remarked that the book was difficult to get through, so she advised him to copy notes from his senpai in his study group. Though embarrassed, Koichi admitted that he didn't have a study group. The woman laughed and called him a loner. She noticed that he seemed to be struggling, which Koichi didn't deny. Because of this, the woman had an idea. She suggested helping him. Some women overheard them from behind, prompting one to comment that Makoto looks like robbing the cradle. She looked at them and said it wasn't like that. She was about to say something else, but Koichi interjected, saying he would appreciate her help. Makoto knew him as Koichi Himawari, a first year in the sociology track. Apparently, he was known there as the creeper of the Narahata ruins. Koichi was extremely embarrassed by this and couldn't believe that rumor was still circulating. She then said that she was looking for someone who knew the place well, so it seemed he would be useful to her. She told him not to worry, as she wouldn't need him. Between her studies and what she needed to take care of, this would be a quid pro quo. The scene shifted to Koichi's penthouse, where Pop Step was hanging out. She looked outside when she heard laughter. It turned out to be Koichi and Makoto. Makoto was laughing hard at calling his place a penthouse. She said he had obviously been deceived by the real estate office. Koichi just scratched his head and said she was right. Meanwhile, Pop Step hurriedly gathered her things to hide before they could enter. Koichi went inside first and asked Makoto to wait outside because he needed to clean up first. Makoto just laughed and said that all men have things they need to hide. Koichi insisted that wasn't the case. He then spotted Pop Step's bear and got annoyed that she always leaves her things scattered around. He also noticed his hoodie hanging up that he needed to hide. He said he'd be dead if someone discovered Crawler's true identity. When Makoto asked if he was almost done, he replied yes while throwing Pop Step's bear outside to where she was hiding. Koichi became nervous when he noticed many beer cans scattered around, which wouldn't look good. So he threw those outside too, which hit Pop Step again. A moment later, Koichi let Makoto in, who had tied up her hair. She said they should start with Koichi's stuff and asked for his schedule. When he gave it to her, she suggested dividing his classes into 3 categories. Classes where only the final exam counts, classes requiring regular homework submissions, and classes emphasizing attendance. While diligently writing and sorting them, Makoto mentioned that she could get lecture notes and passed exams for most of them. But for classes requiring attendance, he would still need to attend. Koichi prepared drinks for them, and he was impressed that she knew all this stuff so well. Makoto said that for the subject they needed to prioritize, which is hero sociology, she would bring him notes for that. But for now, they would prepare for his upcoming quiz on Chapter 3. He agreed while holding his book. Makoto read that Chapter 3, the Introduction to Hero Sociology, was about the discord between vigilantism and the official hero licensing system. She said this topic was perfect, which confused Koichi. She suggested they first discuss vigilantism. According to academic types, it emerged as a way for civilians to maintain peace when society was still chaotic. Most vigilantes appeared during that transitional period, and when society stabilized, they were absorbed into the official system, and vigilantism disappeared. That was the birth of heroes during the advent of the extraordinary. Makoto thought he might had already learned this in his high school modern history class. Koichi remembered and said it did seem familiar to him. Makoto explained that society became chaotic because of powers called quirks. As a result, ordinary people became vigilantes, using their own quirks to maintain law and order. Before long, legislation emerged regarding regulated quirk usage. Vigilantes gained a legitimate, legal basis for their actions, and because of this, they also became heroes. Koichi closed his eyes and said he remembered that. However, Makoto stated that was just the official line. Surprised, Koichi asked if that wasn't what actually happened. Makoto just grinned and said it was time for a pop quiz. She asked where in the world the first hero licensing system occurred. Koichi answered that he thought it was in America. Makoto confirmed he was correct and specified it was in Rhode Island. There were 189 vigilantes affected by the Rhode Island New State Statute. She then asked Koichi how many of them he thought were recognized as official heroes. Koichi pondered this and guessed that not all of them made it. He said some people just weren't cut out to be heroes. He thought about Knuckle Duster while saying this, believing someone like him would surely never make the cut, so he tentatively answered half. Makoto made a buzzer sound and revealed that only 7 out of the 189 were accepted. Most vigilantes were classified as villains due to their illegal use of quirks. Only the truly righteous vigilantes were recognized for their efforts and became the official first heroes. That was the accepted view, and while it wasn't a lie, Makoto explained they could also say that the true goal of the licensing system wasn't to endorse heroes, but to define what constitutes a villain. It was to separate those arbitrarily using their quirks into heroes and villains, and to place limitations on the latter. One part of that plan was to regulate quirks at a societal level. The regulation aspect is still a topic of debate, as it violates the right to bear arms and the right to self-determination. Concerns about public safety gave way to a who watches the watcher situation. While vigilantism may have led to the creation of the licensing system, that ideology now generates criticism of that very system. It's like a weird causal loop. She asked if Koichi understood, and he seemed overwhelmed by all of this information. Makoto added that vigilantism, the brand of personal justice, may have given way to the official hero licensing system because of its public justice. But now two forces are in opposition, monitoring each other. She handed the book to Koichi and said that was the conclusion of Chapter 3. If he wrote that, it would probably be enough for him to pass the quiz, but he should still read the pages she marked. Koichi was delighted because she was extremely helpful. Nevertheless, Makoto told him not to get too comfortable yet. They still had an extra credit problem. She asked what he thought was the defining factor when the government implemented that statute and separated heroes from villains. Koichi wasn't sure, but he answered that it probably had to do with respecting the law and having a mind for justice. Makoto just smiled and said the answer was a secret. Koichi told her not to tease because he wanted to know. Makoto winked and apologized because it wasn't material for their class. It was the theme of her independent study, and if he helped her, he would get the answer there. She asked if he would refuse. Koichi said he would do whatever he could. But what exactly was it, he asked. To which she replied, field work on the Naruhata vigilantes that had recently popped up. Koichi spat out his drink because she was referring to their group. Makoto added that by studying modern-day vigilantes, which are basically living fossils, they might gain new insight into the process that created the hero system they know. She was certain it would be a winning thesis. Koichi coughed, prompting Makoto to ask what was wrong. He answered that he had heard about those vigilantes and what they do. It seemed they were helping preserve peace there. But he asked if it wouldn't be dangerous to chase people who regularly fight with villains. Makoto put her arm around his shoulder and said that's where her bodyguard comes in. Koichi was surprised and asked if she was referring to him. Their study session ended, and Makoto said goodbye. She told him they would meet again on Saturday at 10 in front of the station. She waved as she left Koichi, and as he entered his house, Koichi blushed and said she really knew how to get what she wanted. Now that he was involved, he needed to deceive her. He smiled broadly when thinking about Saturday. Suddenly, someone spoke and told him to wipe that stupid grin off his face. It was Pop Step, who finally emerged from her hiding place, covered in garbage that Koichi had thrown out. He was extremely surprised that she had been there all along. The scene then shifted to a residential building, where a man returned to where Makoto lived. She said, long time no see, and called him Mr. Police Detective. It turned out to be her brother, Naomasa Tsukachi. He noticed that Makoto was fired up and asked if it was about writing her thesis. She replied yes, although she was still looking for materials. She suddenly remembered that her brother was in charge of the Quirk Crimes Division. So she asked if there were any good stories there about the heroes and villains they deal with. He responded that he couldn't leak details about his investigations. Makoto moved closer to him and asked if she could at least interview a famous hero. She asked if he have connections with All Might or some other hero. Naomasa suddenly removed her elbow from his shoulder. Makoto just laughed because she had caught him. Nevertheless, her brother's face remained serious, and all he could say was that heroes were one thing. But he didn't want her curiosity to extend to villains. The very existence of villains was linked to actual crimes. Makoto asked if hate the sin and not the sinner was just political correctness. She clarified that heroes and villains were two sides of the same coin. Sometimes, that's all that distinguished right from wrong. And she personally supported that stance. Her brother replied that he didn't feel like debating right now. It was also impossible for him to match her in a war of words. But whatever her theory was, if she didn't cross that line, then there was no problem. Many people gave ideas like that, as they stumble on the very line in question. Both victim and perpetrator. Makoto thought about this and thanked him for the warning. So, this meant she shouldn't screw up. Her brother got annoyed because that wasn't what he meant. He was saying she shouldn't put herself in danger. Back at Koichi's penthouse, Pop Step was extremely irritated about Makoto coming there as if she owned the place. Didn't she know about personal space and not crossing boundaries, she said. She said she was kind of shameless. While busy reviewing, Koichi simply agreed with her. The next day, Makoto was in a good mood while busy putting on her contact lenses. At Koichi's penthouse, the Vigilantes were occupied with training. Koichi demonstrated his technique. First, he said he would feint back and forth to close the gap. Then, he would pass the opponent's foot and extend his leg to trip them. If the opponent avoided that and attacked from behind, he would stop, turn around, and sweep again. He demonstrated this to him. And if the opponent stopped moving and became defensive, he would retreat quickly. Knuckle Duster studied his technique carefully and gave comments. First, he said Koichi's slide and glide moves were difficult to read. Therefore, he needed to focus on his feints and sweeps. And it would certainly be harder for opponents to get close to him. Also, his switch to escape mode was smooth. He was pleased that Koichi had thought it through carefully. However, from above, Pop Step said it looked weird and extremely annoying. Knuckle Duster couldn't believe what she said. If those moves would give opponents trouble, then they're doing a good job. Pop Step just pouted and looked away, which concerned him. So, Koichi explained that she had been in a bad mood lately. He recounted what happened, and Knuckle Duster was shocked when he heard about the vigilante research. Koichi clarified that one of his college senpai was conducting a study. Their paths crossed, and he ended up helping her. But to Knuckle Duster, that sounded like trouble. They would be in it real deep if an outsider found out who they were. If that happened, both the police and villains would surely attack them before they even realized it. Koichi acknowledged that would be bad, and Pop Step commented that it was extremely idiotic. Knuckle Duster and Koichi looked at her. He said he knew many ways to throw people off their scent. Nevertheless, Koichi insisted he could peacefully mislead her. So Knuckle Duster brought his face close to his and said it was in his hands now. He reminded him not to mix business with pleasure. Koichi wasn't sure which part was business and which was pleasure. Saturday arrived, and there were many people at the station. Makoto was already there, waving at Koichi and thanking him for agreeing to do this. Koichi blushed when he saw her. Makoto wondered why he was staring and asked if there was something wrong with what she was wearing. He replied that it was nothing and that it suited her very well. Pop Step had followed him, and, while hiding, she became annoyed and thought to herself what was so great about it. Makoto explained that based on information from social media and other sites, she had several leads on where their target might appear. Therefore, that's where their research will begin. Koichi just responded that it made sense. In his mind, he thought that's what Pop Step had done previously. But he asked Makoto if the person they were looking for appeared frequently. She answered that encountering the Vigilantes directly would be best. However, what she most wanted to know was how people in that area perceived them, which surprised Koichi. Makoto reminded him of their conversation last time. When the pro-hero system was created, what factors separated heroes from villains? "Right," Koichi answered. And she said he would get the answer to that eventually. Makoto agreed and stated that, of all possibilities, it had nothing to do with law, morals, ethics, or anything like that. According to her, it was public support, or in simple terms, popularity. Koichi was surprised that this was the answer. Makoto explained that because powers like quirks varied so much, the law could only do so much to manage them in a generalized way. Therefore, the right to use such powers depended on trust in the individual. She emphasized that there is serious influence from the popularity contest side of things in modern-day hero rankings. It was the same when the law struggled to keep up with changing times. That's why now, she was closely studying the Naruhata Vigilantes, who were basically like primitive heroes. Specifically, she wanted to know what people in that area thought about them, and she had a feeling that the answer would give them information about the foundations of the current hero system and superpowered society as a whole. Koichi replied that it did sound very interesting. He wondered what people thought about them. He admitted that he wanted to know that too. Anyway, Makoto said it was time for them to interview people on the street, so she asked Koichi to be her cameraman. The first people Makoto interviewed were friends Jubi and Ichimoku. Ichimoku described them as unlicensed hero types, while Jubi asked if he was referring to the crawler and his friends. They grinned and were about to say that the crawler was right beside her. However, Koichi signaled them not to reveal it. Makoto was puzzled when they didn't continue what they were going to say. Ichimoku changed the topic to Pop Step, who started as an internet idol. But lately, she had been patrolling the neighborhood. They just hoped she wouldn't get hurt. Ichimoku admitted he was a fan and said it was nice to see her on the streets. Jubi added that she was a cool gal and showed her autograph. That's why they cheered for her. However, they became annoyed when they remembered the Grandpa Fist guy, referring to Knuckle Duster. According to Jubi, he was bad news. A student then described Crawler as somewhat creepy. He was sure that Crawler had already peeked under people's skirts. But an elderly person said Crawler boy returned her wallet when she dropped it. She said Crawler was a kind young man, but watching him in action was indeed kinda suspicious. Meanwhile, a strong-looking man found it hard to believe that some sketchy guy that helps people out suddenly got popular. As for the children they interviewed, they said Pop Step was the cutest. One added that her buns were all soft and round. An older perverted man also said that her rear end was nice. Another interviewee said it wasn't good for her to rely on exposing her skin. According to him, it was time for Pop Step to move on from the amateur singing stage of her career. Naturally, those who pursued the path of an idol stirred up drama more than their own growth. It seemed Hachisuka was also included in the interview, saying the Vigilantes were scary. The old man wandering around looked like a slasher. Meanwhile, a muscular person said it was crazy to fight a villain using only your fists. It was like a horror movie or something. There was also someone who told a story that a friend of a man he knew was beaten to death by Grandpa Fist. In a whisper, he said it was serious and that it really happened. After their interview, Makoto summarized the information they gathered. Based on the data they collected, Crawler Man was creepy, a helpful man, and nice, but mostly creepy according to the majority. As for Pop Step, people only talked about her butt and how cute she was. Meanwhile, regarding Grandpa Fist, many didn't know him, and those who did thought he was scary and bad news. Koichi couldn't believe that so many people called Crawler Man creepy, which made Jubi and Ichimoku laugh loudly. Suddenly, someone snatched the laptop Makoto was holding, which startled her. She shouted, and Koichi just looked when he noticed the thief. He escaped quickly, and people said it was another soccer robbery. He was always stealing while dribbling a ball in the middle of the crowd. He was like a fantasy star in a thievery world, but others questioned what was the point of his dribbling. He should make better use of his penguin theme. It turned out to be Emperor Yatsura, who had a soccer quirk. He was holding Makoto's laptop while running with a ball at his feet. Jubi and Ichimoku chased after him, while Koichi asked Makoto to hold the camera and told her to just wait there. The two went ahead while Koichi entered an alley to get his hoodie for a disguise. Pop Step was watching him and asked why he was changing. She said it was perfect because the laptop was stolen. Now Makoto had no choice but to go home empty-handed. Koichi was confused by this and said he wouldn't let that happen. Besides, Crawler's identity wouldn't be exposed. He just wanted to show off a little. Pop Step was puzzled and asked when he had become so vain. Koichi then rushed and used his ability to catch up with Emperor. He introduced himself as the Crawler, the man who chases down pickpocket. When he reached him, he showed his new move, the high-speed double sweep. However, it didn't work on him because he quickly dodged it. Koichi couldn't believe he managed to do that while dribbling. Because of that, Koichi had no choice but to back up first, but suddenly he noticed the ball was almost in his face. He was hit by the Emperor's shot in the face, causing him to be thrown back. But something hit Emperor from behind, which he didn't expect. Ikemoku said he should not test them, and Pop Step was also behind them. At last, they caught that scumbag. Meanwhile, Koichi came to the rescue, quickly jumping to catch Makoto's laptop. Jubi and Ichimoku were kicking Emperor to teach him a lesson. But Koichi said violence was bad, so they should restrain themselves. Jubi couldn't believe what he was saying. Makoto caught up with them and excused herself through the crowd, saying she was part of it too. She was very shocked when she saw Koichi's bruised face, who said he was okay. He just tripped and fell when he tried to get her laptop back. But fortunately, someone came dashing in, all brave and gallant. Ichimoku clarified that Crawler Man didn't really do anything, to be honest. Meanwhile, Jubi had already tied up the laptop thief. After the commotion, the two said goodbye to them. Makoto thanked the two as they left and said to Koichi that she appreciated his assistance. Because of him, she got good data. He just smiled and just answered, "Sure thing." Anyway, Makoto really wanted to meet the Vigilantes mentioned, but that would be their mission next time. While observing from above, Pop Step couldn't believe she still wanted to have a next time. Makoto reached out her hand to Koichi and said there was just one last thing. She had a personal question for him. She just smiled, and Koichi held her hand. Suddenly, Makoto asked if he was really the Crawler Man. It was then revealed that Makoto Tsukachi actually has a polygraph quirk, and the only requirement for it to activate is physical contact. Using this, she can determine whether a statement is true or just a lie. When their hands touched, she wanted to confirm if he was the Crawler. However, Koichi denied it, and the polygraph's verdict was that his statement was true. Makoto just apologized to him. That night, at their house, Makoto was visibly troubled while sitting on the couch and staring at her laptop. When her brother asked if she was having problems with her thesis, she answered that she'll just compile the data to create an outline, but she didn't seem happy about it. Naomasa was surprised that she only got an outline. He added that it still lacked punch. She couldn't believe her intuition was wrong. She was certain she had gotten great material to use. Switching to Koichi's penthouse, they read the data Makoto had collected. The opinions of the townspeople about Crawler Man were rather harsh. All it said was get it together, not serious, good effort. Meanwhile, Koichi read about Pop Step, and the interviewees talked about nothing but her butt, and that she was a bad singer. Pop was very shocked by what she heard. The two argued, and Koichi said nobody really understood. Besides, he couldn't accept being called Crawler Man. He wasn't Crawler Man, but the Crawler. Pop asked what he was moaning about. Meanwhile, Knuckle Duster remained unbothered, just reading a newspaper in the middle of their argument. The next day, Koichi and Pop Step were chasing someone on a motorcycle. Koichi introduced himself, saying he was the Crawler and the man who chases down convenience store thieves. Pop Step called Koichi while in midair and told him to let the police handle it. It was dangerous to chase someone on a motorcycle. Nevertheless, Koichi was concerned that the thief might escape through the back alley. So, he said he would keep him on the run until the police showed up. However, suddenly a foot hit him in the face. This happened because the thief he was chasing had a long leg quirk. Because of this, Koichi spun around on the road and didn't anticipate an oncoming truck that was honking at him. It was too late for him to back away, but fortunately, someone saved him in the nick of time. Koichi was surprised when he suddenly rose into the air and saw the truck driver get out of his vehicle. The person who saved him put Koichi down, saying he was a brave boy. However, he should let the pros handle dangerous things. This person was carrying the thief in one hand, while the motorcycle was in his left. Koichi apologized and thanked him, and when he asked for his name, the man couldn't believe that Koichi didn't recognize him. He said it was inconceivable. According to him, he was the top-ranked hero of the United States, Captain Celebrity. He quickly signed Koichi's hoodie as an autograph, which Koichi didn't expect. After that, Captain Celebrity told him not to forget his name. He even suggested that Koichi post a picture on social media to show it off. Koichi wasn't pleased with what he did because he said it was his exclusive All Might hoodie. Captain Celebrity replied to just give it a rest. After all, his signature was worth more. Koichi pouted and said that the person who owns the hoodie should decide what's worth what. Captain Celebrity laughed at what he said and commented that it was a good joke. He removed his visor and couldn't believe that Koichi idolized All Might. For him, All Might was nothing more than a muscle-brained oaf. He had no style. Captain Celebrity suddenly jumped after that and told Koichi that acting like a hero didn't suit him. Upon returning to the penthouse, they caught a TV broadcast about Captain Celebrity. It announced that Christopher Skyline himself would be starting a new career in Tokyo. Because of this, the Japanese debut of one of America's major league heroes was sure to cause waves throughout the hero industry. When Pop watched it, she recognized him as the one who saved Koichi. The screen showed a picture of Captain Celebrity rescuing an entire cruise ship last year at New York Harbor. Pop's step was impressed by this, but Knuckle Duster said that despite his many accomplishments, he also had many issues. He was even called Captain Catastrophe Celebrity. It was just one of the lawsuits or scandals pursuing him. Basically, he could no longer work in the States, so he came there to earn money. Now Koichi understood, as he had gotten bad vibes from him. He was busy erasing Captain Celebrity's autograph from his beloved hoodie. Pop Step was surprised because Koichi never spoke badly about others, to which he replied that he couldn't tolerate people like that on a visceral level. Pop Step answered that he was free to like or hate whoever he wanted. Anyway, she asked what he was doing. Koichi explained that he was removing the stain from his clothes. Someone had scribbled on his hoodie. Meanwhile, in another location, a huge creature was wreaking havoc. People were panicking in the streets because of the giant villain that appeared. While running, they said it was like a monster from the shows. Hachisuka was among the crowd and noticed it was gigantification. She said these types of giants were extremely flashy. That's good, but because they were so large, heroes would surely show up immediately. Furthermore, they were very easy to identify. For her job, surprisingly, this was useless. Hachisuka was just walking slowly while those around her were rushing to escape. She said she would just get a sample when it was over and wished it good luck. Coming to the rescue at the scene was Pop Step, who reported that the monster was near the district. With her was Koichi, who helped with the safe evacuation of people. He guided them and told them everything would be okay. He pointed out the way where they should go and calmed them down. He then heard a child insisting on going back home because Masahiko was left behind. Meanwhile, Captain Celebrity arrived just in time and asked Koichi for an update on the situation. Koichi replied that his timing was perfect. There was a child who didn't escape in time, so he needed to save them. Captain Celebrity just followed Koichi with his eyes as he rushed to go there. However, he apologized and suggested doing it later, which shocked Koichi. Captain Celebrity explained that the media hadn't finished setting up yet, plus his staff was still preparing. Koichi clarified that there was no time for that. But Captain Celebrity added that there was no formal request from the police yet, so he wasn't obligated to work. This annoyed Koichi, who said he would do it himself, and Captain Celebrity was fine with that. Right on cue, someone radioed Captain Celebrity. It was his staff saying they had received a request for action from Narahata Police Station. They were linked to every media outlet, and they had already spoken with local heroes for support, and staff on the ground confirmed that citizens needed to be rescued. Since everything was prepared, they were ready on their end, so he was good to go. Because of this, Captain Celebrity prepared and rushed into action. People were surprised as he flew past them. He just laughed and said it was showtime. He targeted the giant villain and punched it in the face. A DJ seemed to be playing a song about CC or Captain Celebrity. He was supposedly super cool and very charming. He rescued a woman by carrying her, and after that, he continued attacking the villain. He was all smiles for the camera. Meanwhile, Koichi was busy looking for Masahiko. Just then, the villain's tail hit a building, causing it to collapse. A large portion fell where Koichi was, but fortunately, it didn't hit him. The wall was gradually giving way, and Koichi was worried about the many large rocks falling onto the road. But despite this, Koichi didn't stop searching for Masahiko. He heard a dog barking, and upon peeking into a house, he saw a doghouse with Masahiko's name. Koichi was surprised that he was looking for a dog. Anyway, he thought that whether it was a dog or not, life was important. So he took it to save it. However, he had some difficulty removing its leash. He told the dog to stay put for a while because he was having a harder time. Back to Captain Celebrity. For his grand finale, he delivered a knockout blow to the giant villain, which was already on its last legs. Because of this, its enormous body fell between two buildings. As a result, buildings collapsed, affecting Koichi, who was near the area. Fortunately, he had already untied Masahiko. Nevertheless, large rocks continuously fell where they were standing, so Koichi ran quickly. Captain Celebrity heard him shouting, so he looked for them. People were surprised because he seemed to have pulled something from under the fallen villain. It looked like a child who didn't escape in time. They were impressed because he was so fast and always in style. Besides rescuing the child, he even gave them an autograph. So, they said he went the extra mile for a fan. It was as if there was a commentator saying that's what you get from America's top-ranked hero. That's Captain Celebrity for them. Meanwhile, Captain Celebrity's team reportedly rescued 100 people while he was fighting. Koichi felt disappointed because he thought he was just counted among those 100. Pop Step was in front of him and replied that it seemed so. Anyway, it looked like nobody was seriously hurt. Everything was fine. Someone then called for Masahiko, and it turned out to be the little girl he had heard earlier. She thanked Cruller Man for rescuing her dog. Captain Celebrity was above them, saying that rescuing pets was beneath their pay grade. So, he gave that accomplishment to Koichi. He removed his visor and said, "You did it." Koichi scratched his head and thanked him. But while he was there, he had a request. He asked Koichi to cut out darting around his feet, looking uncool. When people saw Koichi's hoodie, he said the cool factor would be lost. He clarified that on-site broadcasts were a big part of his overall image. And with that, he said goodbye while fans chased after him. Koichi was annoyed with him again and said he really disliked him. The scene shifts as the cement of a wall is shown cracking. Someone comments that it looks dangerous. It turns out this is due to a monster battle the other day that has affected the buildings in the area. The building is severely damaged, and they wonder if everyone has been evacuated. Between the buildings, Koichi can be seen on the move, using his quirk to climb the wall to reach the top of the building. He enters the door of each room to check if anyone has been left behind. He introduces himself as the Crawler, the one who rescues people who are too slow to escape from the crumbling building. He then becomes concerned when he finds people still inside, a woman with an injured leg and a sumo wrestler. Koichi is troubled because it seems impossible for him to carry both of them at the same time. Suddenly, someone laughs and calls to him, saying it looks like he has no choice but to help. It turns out to be Captain Celebrity, who is just floating in the air and looking in from outside. Captain Celebrity takes the injured woman, while Koichi is assigned to the sumo wrestler. Koichi questions whether they should switch places. Captain Celebrity replies that he don't swing like that, to which Koichi clarifies that's not what he meant. Captain Celebrity apologizes, saying he don't make a habit of carrying men like damsels in distress. The sumo wrestler just responds that it's much appreciated. Suddenly, a part of the wall cracks, causing the wall to split there. As rubble begins to fall, they know they need to leave immediately. Koichi has no choice but to accept that they will be hit. However, he is surprised when he realizes they aren't affected. This is because Captain Celebrity caught the large crack with one hand. The woman he rescued is impressed, while Captain Celebrity announces that the rescue is complete. Koichi experiences mixed emotions because of this. Captain Celebrity slowly descends to the ground carrying the woman and tells the media to take as many pictures as they want. Koichi is annoyed that he's hogging the spotlight again. The sumo wrestler then thanks him because they were able to get down safely, while Pop Step arrives and calls out to Koichi. Captain Celebrity poses and says it's time to demolish the next building, so they should have some fun. Some women suddenly rush in front of Koichi, cheering "Go, go, CC." They're wearing visors like Captain Celebrity's and cheerleader outfits. Everyone is surprised that he even has cheerleaders. People comment that this must be how they do things stateside. Anyway, they note that their Japanese heroes are entertainers too, so what's wrong with having a little show on site, like a live performance? To Koichi, this seems frivolous. It looks like Captain Celebrity isn't taking the job seriously. But Koichi admits he's somewhat jealous of how flashy it all is. Pop Step remarks that the truth comes out. Koichi is shocked to discover that Makoto is also part of the cheering squad. She praises her female colleagues for their good work and tells each squad to roll call and prepare to move out. She also reminds them not to forget to hydrate. Koichi admits that watching his senpai cheer for a jerk like Captain Celebrity is irritating to him. Pop Step chimes in, telling him to look carefully at how crass she is. She jumps around in a miniskirt like an idiot. This makes Koichi glance at her outfit, but Pop Step clarifies that skirts are supposed to be short like that. Koichi replies that they're basically the same. Makoto notices them and calls out. She quickly runs over and asks for an interview with them, even just a minute of their time. The two become concerned, and Koichi suggests they should separate. Just then, someone calls for Makoto, saying they need her. The media wants a way to contact them, and there's also a woman who wants to join their cheer job. The rescue squad needs more people as well. So Makoto gets distracted from pursuing Koichi and attends to these needs. Suddenly, Captain Celebrity approaches her and asks how she's feeling. Makoto calls him boss, but he tells her to just call him Chris. He praises her for being a good squad leader, but Makoto responds that she's just a go-getter. Captain Celebrity tells her not to be too humble because she's been incredibly helpful to him. He takes off his visor and says he wants to find time to communicate with her about the finer points of their job. Or in other words, they should get to know each other better. Makoto says it would be a pleasure, so she invites him to lunch later. And so she makes a reservation for them. Captain Celebrity then tells her to make sure it's a restaurant with a view of the entire city. He says he can easily sweep her off her feet and fly her up there. Makoto is delighted by this. Koichi watches as the two talk. He finds it creepy how Captain Celebrity is holding her shoulder. Suddenly, Knuckle Duster appears and says that Casanova is at it again, making a mess of things. Koichi is surprised by this. According to Knuckle Duster, that is Captain Catastrophe Celebrity, also known as the Roaring Stallion. Most of his legal troubles have something to do with women. His biggest suit came from his estranged wife seeking reparations for his infidelity. She reportedly took him to court for every cent he had. And yet, he still hasn't taken that lesson to heart. Or perhaps this is his time to spread his wings far from his wife's eye. Either way, he clearly hasn't learned. After the search and rescue, Makoto waits for her meeting with Captain Celebrity. Koichi and Pop follow her. Koichi can't accept that Captain Celebrity is trying to sink his fangs into his senpai. He feels he can't just do nothing, even though Pop tells him to let it go. Koichi is startled when he hears laughter. Captain Celebrity calls out to him and asks what he's doing following a woman from his agency. Koichi and Pop look up at the sky. Right then, Makoto turns around and sees them. She asks what Koichi is doing there, and he replies that he just happened to spot her and was curious about what she was doing. Makoto introduces Koichi to Captain Celebrity as her kohai from college. Captain Celebrity can't believe Koichi is a college student. Koichi sweats nervously and confirms that's right. He's just an ordinary, run-of-the-mill student. Anyway, Captain Celebrity mentions he has a date with Makoto, though she quickly clarifies it's just a work meeting. Captain Celebrity lifts her up to proceed with their conversation, and Koichi just follows them with his eyes. He's extremely annoyed when suddenly their attention is caught by a noise not far away. Meanwhile, on top of a building, Captain Celebrity and Makoto are at the restaurant. Makoto becomes concerned when she learns that someone is robbing a bank below. But Captain Celebrity responds by asking who cares about that. The most important thing, he says, is their little slice of time together. Someone suddenly calls Makoto, and Captain Celebrity urges her to ignore it. He holds her hand and caresses it, saying he'll sweep her off her feet and soar to the sky together, then bring her somewhere even more wonderful after.
That's suspicious.
It turns out Makoto is talking to Pamela, whom she tells that she's having lunch with Chris right now. Captain Celebrity's mood changes, and he asks if she's talking to his wife. Makoto shows him her phone and is puzzled by his reaction. She explains that they started chatting online last week and have basically become friends. She adds that they share various secrets with each other. And Pamela mentioned that if Chris were to repeat his bad habits in Japan, she would use it as grounds for a case to prove he shows no remorse. And so Captain Celebrity breaks into a nervous sweat. Makoto laughs as she mentions that Pamela asked exactly whom he was trying to sweep off their feet. He then escapes and excuses himself, saying he needs to work now and deal with the robbery situation. The scene shifts to the bank where the suspect fires a gun. The robber demands a getaway vehicle, specifically an eco-friendly car. He ties up the tellers and stuffs money into a bag. Outside, police block off the vicinity. One officer reports that the suspect is inside the bank and has fired shots. Meanwhile, his colleague tells civilians to stay away as it's dangerous there. Koichi is annoyed because he left his hoodie at home, but Pop asks what else he could do anyway. The police are already handling the situation. Besides, how would his hoodie help in this situation? People then notice Captain Celebrity's arrival. Because of this, the suspect pulls his hostages closer and tells Captain Celebrity to stay back. Nevertheless, Captain Celebrity effortlessly ties him up and breaks his gun. The women he rescued run toward him. However, he avoids them and apologizes, saying it's not possible right now. He notices Koichi outside, who is surprised. Captain Celebrity borrows him and flies him somewhere. Pop becomes concerned for him. It turns out Captain Celebrity took Koichi to the restaurant and sat him down at their table for a picture. They also take photos with just the two of them. After that, Captain Celebrity calls his wife Pamela and asks if she received the pictures he sent. He explains it was just a misunderstanding and he was just accommodating his fans. When Koichi looks at the pictures, something seems off about them. He mentions that Captain Celebrity isn't the type to hang out with guys in the first place. Makoto suddenly has a realization. In other words, this is a potential opportunity waiting to be tapped. The two are shocked by this. The scene transitions to Makoto explaining that this is an opportunity for a bold policy reversal that could both capture the dwindling male demographic and erase Captain Celebrity's scandalous image. She says that Japan is the new stage he needs to accomplish this. According to her, this is her boss's chance for a revolution. Captain Celebrity ponders this plan. That night, the news reports that Captain Celebrity, known for years as a Playboy hero, is rebooting his image with a new ad campaign in Japan. According to the press release announcing the new strategy, his former catchphrase of cool and charming will be replaced to appeal to Japanese hardliners. His supporters are now shouting rock on Chris, and his squad has completely different outfits and appearances. People are shocked by this while Makoto is proud of her idea. In response to this extreme change in tone, both domestic and foreign media outlets are asking what he's eaten to make him go crazy. While watching the news, Pop becomes curious about what Captain Celebrity has done, to which Koichi replies, "Who knows? Foreign celebrities really do sell out on variety shows." The next day, at Koichi's penthouse, Pop pays a visit. She finds Koichi sleeping while dirty dishes and laundry have piled up. Disgusted by the smell inside, she opens the window. Pop comments that the place is a pigsty and says he should clean up. Koichi just answers that he'll do it later. He explains that he worked the night shift at his job after patrolling yesterday, then went to school, so he really needed some sleep. Suddenly, his cell phone rings, and Pop lets him know. Koichi asks her to get it for him. When he answers, it turns out to be his father, who apologizes because something has happened with his mother. Koichi is shocked to learn that she's heading to Tokyo. His father apologizes again, explaining that he has a class reunion there. Koichi can't believe that she'll be staying at his place and asks when she's arriving. His father replies that she's already on the train. After hearing this, Koichi hurriedly gets dressed, knowing he'll be scolded. He tidies up the house and cleans. When Pop asks why he's panicking, he explains that his mother is the strictest woman she'll ever meet. He's sure to get an earful unless everything is perfect. Pop can't believe it since he's already an adult. But Koichi insists that she doesn't know his mother. She didn't even want him to go to Tokyo in the first place. She had mentioned that a naive softie like him would surely be tricked by hooligans into committing crimes. Pop thinks to herself that his mother was right about that. Koichi continues that if his mother finds out anything is wrong at all, he'll surely have to quit school and might be sent back to the countryside. Pop is shocked by this. Koichi explains that he does give his mother updates when they talk on the phone. He recalls what he's told her, such as that he's doing fine in school, has a decent reputation at work, and leads a respectable life. Pop asks what's wrong with that, saying there are no lies in what he mentioned. But Koichi isn't finished. He also told his mother that he'd found a wonderful girlfriend. Pop blushes at this, while Koichi explains that his mother would never forgive lying. So what would he do when she asks to meet his girlfriend? He wondered. Pop responds how would she even know and questions why he mentioned such a lie in the first place. He explains that it just happened in the middle of their conversation. Pop then says goodbye and comments on how stupid one guy can be. A few hours later, Koichi's mother arrives. He greets her, saying it's been quite a while since they've seen each other. She inspects his house and looks in his refrigerator. She's proud that he's managed to build a life for himself there. Koichi then offers tea and feels nervous about what else she might say. Nevertheless, she immediately brings up the topic of his girlfriend, whom she says she wants to meet. Koichi can't believe she went straight to that topic. Just as they're talking, Makoto arrives and introduces herself, saying that she and Koichi are dating. Koichi apologizes to her for this weird favor and mumbles that he'll pay her back for it. Makoto mentions that she's ahead of Koichi in school. His mother is delighted and comments on how charming she is. She then falls silent before suddenly smacking Koichi on the head despite being far away from him. It turns out her quirk is fly swatter, which surprises Makoto. Koichi's mother hits him repeatedly and tells him to stop this act. She questions how someone as put together as Makoto would date someone like Koichi. Koichi is surprised that he's been caught and comments on how harsh his mother's words are. His mother sits with her chin in her hand and says that now she can't trust anything he says about his schooling or other matters. It seems she'll have to take him back home with her. And that's exactly what Koichi has been afraid of. However, Makoto says that she keeps an eye on Koichi at school, so his mother shouldn't worry about his studies. Besides, there might come a time when they actually do date. His mother replies not to get her hopes up, as she's not fond of empty promises. But she's pleased with how well Makoto speaks. So she asks if Makoto would be okay with becoming her daughter-in-law. Makoto says she'll consider it. Just then, the doorbell rings, and it's Pop, who enters shyly. Her look and demeanor were completely different, which confuses Koichi. Because of this, Pop tries to walk out, but Koichi pulls her back and tells her not to rush. He offers her tea since she's already there. He whispers that things seem to be going in his favor, so he wants to play up his popularity as much as possible. Pop retorts that this is exactly why they've ended up in this mess. As a result, Koichi pushed her to introduce her to her mother, almost calling her Pop Step. But she quickly stopped him and introduced herself as Kazuho Hanayama. Koichi was surprised to learn her real name. Pop told him to shut up and introduce her properly. Koichi explained that she was a local who was always around his place. Pop thought to herself that he was a terrible liar. His mother wondered why a local girl like her would spend time with him. Makoto was also curious and asked how they met. Before he could answer, someone else arrived at the penthouse. Koichi and Pop didn't expect this person, thinking this would be the hardest to explain. It was Knuckle Duster, but dressed differently. He was wearing a formal coat, which surprised both of them. Koichi's mother and Makoto were impressed by him. Koichi's mother then told Makoto to find a man her own age. Koichi greeted him and called him master. He replied that he had just come from work. And so Koichi introduced him to his mother and Makoto. Knuckle Duster was pleased to meet them and reached into his coat. It turned out to be a business card as he introduced himself as Kuroiwa. Koichi's mother was delighted by his politeness. Koichi was surprised that he had a business card and that he didn't know his real name was Kuroiwa. Pop whispered that of course he had a real name. Makoto also asked for a card because she never missed an opportunity to network. Looking at the card, she saw that Takashi Kuroiwa was the Narahata area representative for NPO, Civil Assistance. Makoto was impressed and asked what kind of projects he worked on. Behind them, Pop and Koichi wondered what an NPO was. Kuroiwa explained that they provide support to neighborhoods like East Narahata where the local government and community organizations are less effective. In fact, volunteer workers like Koichi are key to their mission. They keep the streets clean and patrol for crime at night. Koichi thought to himself that what Kuroiwa said was actually true, although Pop suspected the NPO part was fake. Koichi's mother didn't question this because Koichi has always liked such activities. She said that while he may be unreliable, he's always been the type to pick up trash and do similar things. Kuroiwa added that Koichi's commitment has been a great help to them. He also mentioned that they use Koichi's apartment for their meetings. And now they even have self-defense training on the roof. Because of this, Makoto realized why Koichi calls him master. She then grabbed Kuroiwa's arms and commented on how strong he seemed. She was impressed with his physique. She asked if he had a previous job such as military police or perhaps was a hero. Koichi's mother couldn't believe it when Makoto mentioned being a hero. She said they should stick to ordinary people. She said they should know what happens to heroes. They allow themselves to be used until their own lives are ruined. Koichi's mother shares that her son once had heroic aspirations too. He thought appearance would make the man, so he used to run around imitating All Might. He would try to stop fights and get hurt. He would put himself in danger to help others. And when he went to Tokyo for his high school entrance exam, he said he was going to become a hero. However, he came home slinking because he had fallen into a river. She sighs and says how unreliable her son is and how he's always getting into trouble. Pop suddenly interrupts, saying that's not true, which surprises everyone. Pop blushes, and when Makoto asks if she wants to say something, she just replies never mind. They try to get her to speak, but she becomes embarrassed and quickly leaves. Koichi's mother is concerned that they might have pressured the girl too much. Koichi can't believe it and says his mother shouted her into submission. His mother suddenly uses her quirk and tells him not to just stand there, but to go after her. Koichi scratches his head and asks what he should do when he catches up to her. Makoto suggests that since Pop clearly put effort into her appearance, he should compliment her. Pop hurriedly rushes down the stairs, causing her to slip. Fortunately, Koichi catches her and comments on how clumsy she is on solid ground. Pop removes his hands from her and says she's going home. When she asks what he wants, Koichi scratches his head and says nothing. He remembers Makoto's advice and mentions that her outfit looks different today. Pop blushes and admits she tried something new. Koichi doesn't know what to say to her. When Pop pressures him to speak, he just replies that she looks super casual. Pop didn't expect that answer. She looks at her clothes and asks if they really look casual. She gets annoyed and walks out again because of Koichi's casual comment, and it also seems like Koichi got smacked because of it, which confuses him. When he returns to his apartment, Koichi tells them that Pop has gone home. He then asks his mother how long she plans to stay. She responds that she and Makoto are making plans to go sightseeing in Tokyo. Makoto asks Koichi to find time in his schedule to join them. In the next scene, Koichi's mom went sightseeing with him and Makoto, where they took many photos. His mom was delighted because the city was so lively, so she decided to visit more frequently, while Koichi said he was happy that she was enjoying herself. Makoto noticed his expression, that he looked as calm as a Buddha, so she asked if everything was okay, to which he replied that as well he should, and explained that his dad had given him advice to let your heart be unperturbed as you await the storm's passing. Suddenly, his mom commented that she almost forgot to buy a souvenir for his dad, while Koichi's attention was caught by some All Might collaboration merchandise. He also spotted an Asakusa Thundergate exclusive All Might hoodie, which excited him and made him comment that he didn't know they made such a hoodie. His mom smacked him on the forehead and scolded him because she thought he was still wasting money on garbage like those. So he said he was just window shopping, while Makoto told them that it was nearly time to catch the bus. Before leaving, Koichi still decided to buy the merchandise, so his mom shouted at him that it was time to leave. When they arrived at the terminal, there was a cat jumping up to climb onto the roof of a bus. A tour guide was explaining that this bus was for Tokyo's hot spots and at a glance Tohata Tour's half-day tour, and that their tour would end with a ride back to Tokyo Station where they started. After the three of them boarded, Koichi's mom said how enjoyable the day was and thanked Makoto. She added that her parents really broke the mold when they made her. Koichi's mom said she wouldn't bother Makoto anymore with daughter-in-law talk, and instead asked if she could just take Koichi's place herself. Koichi then wondered what that would make him. Makoto answered uncertainly that perhaps a free agent, so Koichi's mom immediately and bluntly told him that he was off the team, which made him comment that this was really cruel. Koichi then heard a sound that caught his attention, and suddenly the engine of the bus malfunctioned. It turns out that Hachisuka had placed a bee on the back of the cat that climbed onto the roof earlier and injected it with trigger drug. This caused the cat to emit electricity from its body while transforming. At Hachisuka's usual hangout, we can see her just chilling and watching the event unfold. She said that everything was ready, and it was time for a surprise tour. She controlled the cat, and it appears that it has a monster cat quirk where it can merge with a vehicle. The bus that Koichi and the others were riding started moving quickly, causing fear among those inside. Civilians on the street ran to avoid being hit by this runaway bus. Knuckleduster saw this from a rooftop and wondered about a cat possessing that bus. Since they couldn't get information from a cat about how it turned that way, he decided to let the pros handle it, but when he looked closely using his binoculars, seeing Koichi caught his attention. While walking with some schoolmates behind her, Pop Step's phone rang. She answered it and whispered to Knuckle Duster that he should stop calling her at weird hours, but she quickly became alert when he said Koichi was in danger. She immediately changed clothes and went to Knuckle Duster, where she expressed her dismay at Koichi's terrible luck to be involved in a runaway bus incident. Knuckle Duster asked if she brought what he requested. When they went down to the streets, Pop Step took out the feather duster and duct tape and asked what he was going to do with them. So Knuckle Duster answered that there was no time to explain and just told her to give them to him. Due to the monster cat's sudden turn, the female tour guide struggled to maintain her balance while shouting at her companions not to panic as they already sent a distress call. Koichi asked how they could not panic and said no one could tell when help would arrive. However, he suddenly heard a strange sound coming from outside, and when he listened carefully, he noticed it sounded like an engine. It turns out that Turbo Hero Ingenium had arrived on the scene. He didn't waste any time and immediately opened the door of the bus, where he even apologized for damaging it. He asked if anyone was hurt, and while he was doing this, he and Koichi made eye contact. So the two of them decided to pretend they didn't know each other, which confused Makoto. Ingenium also asked the driver about the situation, to which the nervous driver replied that it wasn't good because the brakes and steering weren't working. He started to worry because he knew it was difficult to stop something this large using external force, and it would be a disaster if it crashed in the urban area where they were, so he thought about what he should do. Suddenly, the passengers noticed there were people in front of the bus, and when Koichi looked, he was surprised to see Knuckle Duster holding a feather duster attached to a thin pole. When he thought about what he was holding, he soon realized it was a cat toy. Knuckle Duster used it to get the monster cat's attention, and after throwing it to the other side, the cat followed it, which led to a new route. Ingenium's team members told him that the runaway bus was now on the expressway, and there was a dead end in the Narahata area where the overpass had been destroyed. He realized it probably was destroyed due to the rampaging monster the other day. He also pointed out that there were no other vehicles here, but now they had a time limit. His team members informed him that at its current speed, the bus would reach the end of the road in 5 minutes, which made him comment that he wasn't in the mood to fly to his death with this bus. Next, Ingenium asked his team if Pit 02 was arriving, to which his teammate replied that it had just arrived. Ingenium praised his teammate and instructed them to match the speed of the monster cat, pull up in front of the bus, and prepare for passenger transfer. Koichi was concerned about the idea of moving people at this speed, so he pointed out that it was too dangerous because it would be too bumpy. Ingenium said that's where his promising new recruit, Enigma, would come in. Enigma waved at Koichi, and before long started carrying passengers to Pit 02. Koichi commented on how great Enigma was, and that it wouldn't be long before the people would be rescued, while Ingenium continued guiding the people. After most people were moved into Pit 0, only Koichi and his group remained, and his mom felt relieved because it seemed no one was hurt. However, Koichi's mom seemed to jinx the situation when Hachisuka commented that it wouldn't be fun if things ended like that, so she decided to inject the monster cat with an extra dosage. Because of this, its tail started to go wild and hit the side of Pit 0, causing the two vehicles to move apart. Unfortunately, Makoto was left inside the monster cat, which made Koichi shout in concern. The Pit 0 driver managed to safely steer the truck to the side and stop it. After the passengers got off, Koichi immediately told Ingenium that his senpai was still inside the bus, so Ingenium quickly ran there while telling them to check on the injured. While running, Ingenium thought about what approach he should take. He said he needed to avoid the enemy's tail whips while rescuing the hostage, which complicated the situation. Suddenly, he ran out of gas, which worried him. He seemed to have used it all up chasing the bus earlier. His running gradually slowed down, but fortunately, an individual suddenly appeared and gave him grapefruit juice while saying that backup had arrived, which surprised him. The individual pointed out that word was going around that he used juice as fuel, and he didn't know that. It turns out it was Koichi wearing the Asakusa Thundergate exclusive All Might hoodie, and he asked if Ingenium was confused by it. Next, he introduced himself as the man who cloaks himself in the history and culture of Asakusa, the Crawler Thundergate Special. Ingenium replied that he wasn't confused by that, but by what he said about backup. Ingenium's team member explained to him that they had no choice but to send Koichi because their vehicle was sidelined, and he appeared to be faster than their sidekicks, which hurt their feelings. They also said that since the bus had sped up, they only had about 2 minutes left before it reached the end of the road, so there was no time to talk, to which he commented that was correct, and that he probably couldn't handle it alone. While they were hurriedly chasing the enemy, Ingenium suddenly commented that he was very grateful for the assistance of a concerned citizen who happened to be at the scene. After that, he told Koichi that he would go ahead while Koichi should just follow him while staying in range, and that he should avoid combat and reckless locomotion at all costs and not go overboard, to which Koichi agreed to everything he said. After finishing the grape juice, Ingenium started to accelerate and shouted for them to move while calling Koichi his partner. In the next scene, we go back 1 minute before these events happened. Here, Team Oniii-Chan tells Ingenium that they estimate the bus will reach the dead end within 3 minutes, and that tour bus possessed by the cat villain is currently speeding on the Belt Expressway in the Narahata area. One of the passengers is still inside, and Ingenium is in pursuit trying to rescue them, but the team member speaking to Ingenium is worried that he has run out of fuel. It wouldn't be good if they couldn't provide him with more, said one of them. Some sidekicks suggested sending a vehicle there, but Pit 02 is out of commission. Because of this, one of them said they have no choice but to find someone among the people there with a mobility quirk to deliver fuel to Ingenium. At first, Koichi was thinking that if he had his All Might hoodie, he could help, but he quickly remembered that he had just bought one earlier. He introduced himself to the Oniii-Chan team as the man who can move quickly, the crawler, which made them wonder where he came from. The man asked him if he had a high-speed movement quirk, and if so, he should hurry and consider himself part of the Ida support team. However, his mom suddenly shouted, "Wait." She hit him repeatedly while saying he shouldn't move and that this was not a place for civilians to take action. To his mother's surprise, he called out to her and seriously said there was no time for that, which shocked her. His mom swayed, but fortunately Knuckle Duster, acting as just Takashi, arrived and caught her, accompanied by Pop Step who brought first aid for the injured. After that, we return to the present where Ingenium and Koichi have caught up to the monster cat. It immediately tried to hit them with a tail whip, but Ingenium easily dodged it while saying he was right that the tail was indeed a problem because it attacks when they get close. He apologized to Koichi because he wanted to use him as bait, which Koichi immediately agreed to, and got the monster cat's attention. From inside, Makoto saw him. In Koichi's mind, he explained their plan where he would get the enemy's attention from the front, while Ingenium would hitch a ride at the back and rescue Makoto. He used the flaps of his hoodie as a cat toy, so the monster villain started chasing him. It jumped, which surprised him, while Ingenium quickly used his torque over Recipro burst to kick the bus and prevent it from hitting Koichi. Because of this, they stopped briefly and the bus started speeding up again. Unfortunately, due to that last burst, Ingenium's suit was close to overheating and forcing a cooldown. He worried about what he would do next. He was torn about using something like a special move because there was no time left and said he would be extremely stalled if he failed in what he was planning. Koichi moved beside him and said he would go ahead, which surprised Ingenium. Koichi said it was okay and that the tails probably wouldn't attack anymore, so if he could just get close, he might be able to rescue Makoto. He started accelerating while Ingenium told him to wait because it was dangerous, but he just continued to accelerate. Team Oniii-Chan informed them that the bus was just 200 meters away from the dead end, so Ingenium should brake now. Koichi pushed himself to go faster, and before long, he managed to reach the door of the bus. As soon as he grabbed it, he got on and shouted that he was here. However, he didn't notice that his hoodie had come off his face, so Makoto was shocked that he was the crawler. Unfortunately, they reached the dead end and the monster cat began to free fall. On Ingenium's side, he locked in and said he wasn't giving up yet. He took a stance while running and used his ultimate move, Engine Mod Hyper Acceleration Rocket Charge. Because of this, his speed increased at an extraordinary rate, and he immediately shouted at Koichi to jump and that he would catch them in midair. Koichi noticed that Ingenium was trying to jump to the other side of the bridge, and he thought that he could glide upward from the side of the bus. He tried it, and they managed to jump, but just as they were about to reach for each other's hands, his speed wasn't enough to grab it, so they began to fall. However, Koichi didn't give up and thought about making up the rest, and it seemed like he unlocked a move when he used force of will acceleration, where he suddenly can jump without stepping on any surface but only air. While this was happening, we go to Koichi's mom, where she explains to Knuckle Duster that her son was able to move through the air before. She said that when he was a baby, he started floating even before he learned how to walk. No one could tell how far he might have flown if she had let him go alone. She said that out of excessive worry, she would give him light smacks whenever he started floating to stop him. She added that she knew the time would come when those spanks wouldn't be enough to keep him on the ground. Knuckle Duster commented that a parent is certainly allowed to worry, but sooner or later their children need to fly. All they can do, he said, is teach them how to fall correctly. After that, we return to the situation with Ingenium, Koichi, and Makoto, where Koichi managed to hand Makoto over to Ingenium. They reached the other side of the bridge, where Koichi rolled around because he couldn't control himself. Makoto immediately went to him out of concern, while Ingenium's suit was emitting a lot of smoke from overheating. Despite his injuries, Koichi just smiled and said it was falling with style, which made Makoto comment that he could say it like that. At the bottom of the destroyed bridge, the bus finally crashed, which shocked the construction workers there. Fortunately, Hachisuka was there waiting, and the kitty was safe. That evening, they returned to Koichi's house, and his mom told them that it seemed she could trust him with his friends there, and that she would be going home. Koichi suddenly perked up and somewhat sarcastically asked if his mom was really leaving. He said she could still stay longer, which earned him a smack on the head from his mom, who told him not to say words he didn't mean to say. After that, his mom also spoke to Pop Step and Knuckle Duster, saying that her son was in their hands now. She told them to feel free to smack him when he goes too far, to which Knuckle Duster seriously replied while clenching his fist that he understood. Next, his mom whispered to Makoto and said she realized their day had been a bit chaotic but asked her to consider being part of their family, which made Koichi comment that she really doesn't give up. Makoto thought for a moment, and before long, replied with a blush that she would give it open-minded consideration, which surprised Pop Step and made Koichi blush while asking if she was joking. In the next scene, during their training on the rooftop, they tried to measure the height that Koichi could float, and they saw that he could reach 30 centimeters. Pop Step questioningly told him to just practice and maybe he could reach 50 centimeters, and pointed out that skimming over curbs might be useful. Koichi was disappointed with what he could do now because he said last time was super cool, like he did a double jump. Because of this, Pop Step asked him if he was sure he wasn't just imagining it, like a sad illusion stemming from his complex about his quirk, but Koichi disagreed and pointed out that it really happened, but he just couldn't replicate it now. He explained that it felt like he was imbued with the power of Asakusa, some kind of one-time miracle as he remembered the hoodie he bought, which made Pop Step say that Asakusa had nothing to do with it. In the next scene, we go to a school where Soga is asking around about a girl. He shows the students there an image of her from middle school, saying that her hair is different now. It's shorter in the back and she hides one of her eyes. The female students he was questioning were startled and asked if he was trying to pick up girls right in front of the school of all places, and they seemed disgusted and frightened by his appearance. Two female friends of Hachisuka heard Soga's description of the girl he was looking for, and they thought it sounded like Hachisuka. They also wondered if she was involved in some trouble. One of them with a low bun said she wasn't sure what was happening, but it would be better to let Hachisuka know, and she asked for her number from her companion. However, her friend suddenly disappeared from her side, which confused her. The teachers came out to confront Soga at the gate and pointed out that he's really not allowed to be here. So Soga irritably asked if they were trying to shoo him off, and just abided. While he was walking on the sidewalk, one of Hachisuka's friends with long hair emerged from an alley and quietly asked Soga if he had business with Hachisuka. Because of this, Soga decided to talk to the girl, and she asked him what he would do if he found her. Whatever was happening was shady, she said. So Soga replied that he was just a messenger and had no clue whether it was shady or not. The girl commented that if that was the case, he was just an errand boy, which irritated him. Then, while lifting her skirt, the girl told him that errand boy or not, she had something special just for him, and playfully asked him how they should do it. Soga was shocked and said with a blush that whatever she was thinking, she should stop it. It wasn't needed. However, His assumption was wrong when swarms of bees started coming out from the private part of this girl, while she eerily said that what wasn't needed here was him. After they came out, the girls seemed to weaken, while the bees began to swarm towards Soga. Soga was surprised, but fortunately, he had a spray can of Bees Be Gone, and using his spikes on his fist, he punctured it to create a smokescreen. He quickly ran out of the alley, but unfortunately, he tripped there, so all he could do was wait to be feasted on by these bees. Luckily, there was an individual who sent a flame attack at them that consumed them. It turns out that his two friends had arrived, and Rapt immediately invited him to get on their motorcycle. He quickly ran there, and while getting on, Rapt teasingly asked him if he was sticking his neck out where it didn't belong again, to which he bluntly replied that it had nothing to do with the two of them. Because of that, Moyuru commented that he was too cold, and Rapt agreed, while saying that he shouldn't be the only one having fun, adding that whatever he was involved in seemed fun to them. While this was happening, we go to a hospital. Here, Knuckle Duster is talking to an individual lying on a hospital bed. He told them that a lot had happened in the past few years, but he thought things hadn't been all bad. Now, he said he had time to spend with family like this, and added that he really been on the up and up. He said he had hobbies and friends, leading a better life than he used to. He just wished they had come sooner. A nurse came into the room and called them Mr. and Mrs. Aguro. She told Knuckle Duster that the doctor wanted to speak with him and it would be better if it was now, to which he agreed. When he arrived at the office, the doctor spoke to him about his wife's condition, which didn't bring a smile to his face. After a few moments, he returned to the room and smilingly told his wife that her doctor had just spoken with him. While fixing his wife's blanket, he commented that doctors say what they have to, but they can't always rely on that. He used himself as an example by saying, did his wife know how many times they had told him he was a lost cause? We are shown his wife mumbling while looking out the window, and she has an eye patch on her left eye. Knuckle Duster stroked her shoulder and said he would take care of Tama, so she shouldn't worry and they would be okay. In the next scene, we go to the hospital reception, and here Knuckle Duster saw Soga, so he asked what he was doing there. Soga took out his calling card and pointed out that the woman at the desk said there was no patient here named Kuroiwa. The two of them left the hospital, and while walking, Knuckle Duster said the card was just one way to get in touch with him. Soga asked then what his real name was. The nurses would give him weird looks if he just asked them for a man visiting a sick family member. Knuckle Duster looked up at the sky and suddenly commented that Soga didn't seem like the type to meddle in other people's business, to which Soga irritably asked if he was really going to say that after ordering him to run several errands. Next, Soga told Knuckle Duster that he had tracked the bee user's school based on the uniform she was wearing, but he was suddenly attacked. The one who attacked him asked if he had business with Hachisuka, which made Knuckle Duster think it was a pseudonym, and if so, the school registry wouldn't be any help. However, he said, the pseudonym still counted as intel, so he praised Soga. He asked if it was a private school in the area that he went to, where Soga just pointed out that he was getting into some nasty crap here. He also asked if his two friends knew what he was doing here. Knuckle Duster turned to him and asked if he was concerned about his friends, which just irritated him. Then, he said that there was no need to drag them into this any further. He explained that as long as he was there causing a scene and drawing attention, a lead was bound to fall into their laps sooner or later, which made Soga realize that he was just bait all along. So Knuckle Duster said he was just picking the right man for the job. While they were talking, Soga's friends were surprised to see them together. Soga added that besides, he wasn't seeing him wandering around dressed like All Might. As if, Knuckle Duster arrogantly replied that was exactly what he was thinking, which irritated Soga. In the next scene, while walking with his friends, Moyuru commented that he noticed he would be stubborn about sticking with this, but he thought it would be better if he didn't join in. With the drugs, with Knuckle Duster, with everything. Rapt said that drugs was one thing, but that old man really brought trouble. He might even be mentally unstable, he added, to which Moyuru agreed. Someone called out Soga's name, and it turned out to be Koichi, who happily asked how his injuries were from what happened last time, while Pop Step was shouting at him not to approach them. As he got closer, Moyuru commented that it takes a big man to start talking to people who beat him up, to which Koichi scratched his head while saying that a lot had happened since then. On the side, Rapt was teasing Pop Step by saying she was still showing too much skin as usual, even calling her a skank. That made her furious. When Koichi asked Soga if what he told him was correct, he just started walking away from them in irritation, which confused them. After that, we go to Hachisuka, and here she had just returned home. While taking off her shoes, she called her mom to tell her a story. She said that today at school, there seemed to be a stalker looking for her, and added that wasn't it scary. Then, she returned her dad's credit card because it was maxed out. She commented that it had a worse credit limit than she thought it did. She sat on the sofa between them, and happily said it was time to watch TV and eat dinner. While she was watching, we were shown her bees crawling and flying around, and the ones she called mom and dad appeared lifeless and unconscious as the bees landed on them. While chewing, Hachisuka said that life in this place was becoming boring and it might be time to move soon. Afterward, we moved to a scene in an abandoned warehouse where Knuckle Duster was working out. He was doing pull-ups with tires hanging from his body, and next he also practiced his combat prowess by punching a wooden dummy and numerous punching bags. He rested after all this and drank water, and to cool down his body further, he showered himself with it. Next, he picked up a photograph and grinned while looking at it. It turns out this was the photo that Soga was showing to the students earlier, and he seriously told it that she wouldn't escape from him. In the next scene, we go to Koichi's house, and here a performance request has come for Pop Step, so he asked her when and where it would take place. Pop Step said that they emailed her blog asking if she wanted to perform at a live event at a department store. Koichi happily commented that it was super cool and that she would be like a real idol, but she said she wasn't sure about it. She explained that objectively speaking, people just see her as a singing street performer, which surprised Koichi. In his mind, Koichi thought that he didn't realize she was so self-aware, and he tried to cheer her up by saying she has many fans there. Pop Step reasoned that they'd be comparing her to other performer, and if she screw up on a big stage, they'll be disappointed and desert her. Because of this, she thought it might be better not to do it, but then again she really wanted to perform. She was thinking that opportunities like this don't come often. Next, she asked Koichi what he thought she should do, which surprised him. Koichi thought about what to say, thinking that if he told her to relax and that she would be fine, she would punch him in anger, saying not to just tell her what she wanted to hear, but if he suggested she shouldn't do it, she would also punch him in anger, saying he should be on her side. Because of this, he asked Knuckle Duster instead what he thought about it, which made Pop Step angry at him for asking that old man's opinion. Knuckle Duster responded that she should go and do her best, and he also told Koichi to help her, which surprised him. He prepared to leave, and as he folded the newspaper he was holding, he playfully hit Pop Step on the head with it and told her to do her performance right. Koichi commented that it was weird how direct Knuckle Duster was, to which Pop Step angrily told him to focus on her issue, and he happily agreed and said he would do what he can. Next, Koichi decided to discuss it with Makoto, so she came along and was excited to help. Makoto shook Pop Step's hand while saying she was looking forward to working with her and called her Pop, which shocked her greatly. Pop Step pretended not to know what she was talking about and said she didn't know who Makoto was referring to, which Makoto just went along with. She then pushed Koichi outside and yelled at him about what he was thinking, spreading her secret to Makoto. So Koichi explained that Makoto's intuition was just as sharp as Tax, and she basically figured everything out after the bus incident. Makoto then interjected and asked them where Knuckle Duster was, so Koichi told her that he had just gone home a little while ago. After that, they went back inside, and here Makoto tried to talk to Pop Step, telling her she didn't need to be so defensive and asked her to listen to what she had to say. First, she promised that aside from the event in question, she wouldn't say a word about her masked escapades to anyone. It was just about protecting her sources. Second, if she would allow her to have a more active role in this, she would consider it a job, and she had no intention of disturbing the interpersonal relations in the workplace, which made Pop Step nervous and blush while saying she had no idea what that meant, while Koichi just wondered on the side. And the last point, she said she was the best of the best for her, and if she had something that needed to be done, she should feel free to rely on her. Of course, assuming she didn't have any other reliable people in mind. Pop Step tried to find reliable people by looking at Koichi, but that quickly changed to unreliable, so she was forced to half-heartedly accept Makoto's offer, to which she happily replied not to worry and that it was a decisive choice. After they agreed to work together, Makoto began to look at what they would be doing there. She saw that according to the email Pop Step received, She was invited to perform at a free live event hosted by a department store. It would be held at the Naruhata branch of Marukane department store. It was one of the buildings damaged by the rampaging monster, so it was closed for repairs. She explained that this event was meant to drum up business for the grand reopening. She added that the event space on the roof has a capacity of 300 people, but it will be free, so no tickets are being sold. The official website of the store says that this coincides with the opening of a food court on the roof, so they're using the term live event loosely. She suspected that the audience would mostly be shoppers walking around while buying food. Koichi imagined what it would look like, which made him comment that it was like a traveling theater. Next, Makoto also explained that they were focusing on recruiting local amateurs and indie performers who could easily fit this kind of event into their schedules. None of these would cost much money or time, so she was sure they were hoping to heat up the events using some exciting local talent like Pop Step. She could think of it as like a neighborhood karaoke tournament. Koichi happily commented if that was all it was, and that it seemed like an easy win for Pop Step. However, Pop Step was just muttering to herself about the karaoke part, and if Makoto will just make fun of her. Makoto noticed her reaction, so she approached her and asked if she would agree to really blow the sponsors' minds there, which surprised her. While this was happening, we went to the city, and here there was another monstrous villain disturbing the civilians. The civilians were concerned because the individual's quirk combined gigantification, flight, spinning, and turtles. There was a person who tried to say it was a dead ringer for something, so another shouted not to say it because it would be a lawsuit waiting to happen. In the sky, Captain Celebrity quickly flew to the scene. When he arrived, he coughed briefly and began saying that the shining trail left across the sky marks a man's dedication. And that was him, Captain Celebrity, and he was happy to be there. Samazu and Jubea's gang started cheering loudly that they were counting on their big bro Chris, which made Captain Celebrity awkwardly wave at them. They started his new catchphrase while he was defeating the villain. His reporter began explaining that right here in Naruhata, one of America's top-ranked heroes, Captain Celebrity, had leaped into action again to take down a villain. His already famous Japanese-style cheer squad was also there in force and gaining the admiration of the public. Next, Captain Celebrity's assistant told him that he had received a call from Makoto. His assistant transferred the call, and Makoto told him that as he knew, his battle with the giant villain the other day had caused considerable damage to the Naruhata area, so they were still dealing with the effects. Captain Celebrity said that insurance was paying for most of that, and he was helping out with the construction effort. He also emphasized that he was even prioritizing incidents in Naruhata and was dealing with one right now in fact, which made him comment that he felt like he was doing all he could. Makoto had another idea and said she was creating an opportunity to greatly widen his appeal to residents in the area, to which he said it was up to her and she could set it up, so she thanked him and said she would make the arrangements. After that, Makoto immediately began calling potential sponsors. Next, she called the Marukane department store and introduced herself as the chief manager of the Captain Celebrity agency. She asked if she could speak with their event planner, and when the call was transferred, she began explaining that they fully supported their proposed goals, so they weren't asking for any compensation in return for the Captain Celebrity guarantee. She added that if they were willing to simply credit Captain Celebrity for his cooperation, it would be mutually beneficial on both sides, publicity-wise. On their part, she said, they were trying to push the neighborhood restoration angle, so they were completely on board with the local talent showcase aspect of the event, as they had planned. However, they didn't want it to appear cheap or tacky, so she suggested they discuss structuring up the venue. They would be happy to do their part by providing equipment and personnel. After that, Makoto explained to Koichi that basically, she used Captain Celebrity's name to make the event bigger and better, more of a live indie concert than a karaoke competition. That extra cost would fall on the agency, but they would recoup it through ad revenue. Koichi commented that she was really a go-getter. Makoto clenched her fist in triumph and said that now she could get a part in this event as a representative for Captain Celebrity's agency, and together, they would make the concert one to remember. Pop Step blushed with excitement and thanked her. In the next scene, while Pop Step and Koichi were sitting on a bench, Samazu and Jubei approached them because they had heard the news that they would be headlining with Captain Celebrity. Pop Step shyly said she didn't know about the headlining. Captain Celebrity was the main event, and she would just make an appearance there. She was part of the local flair they wanted to do, and she probably wouldn't even talk to him. Samaza brushed that off and said it was still awesome. They would invite the whole gang to watch together, and they would all support them. Pop Step smiled at this and thanked them. She explained that this was her first time on a real stage, so she also wondered if she could really do it. She became quiet after saying this, and suddenly curled up at the edge of the bench, so Koichi whispered to Samazu that he was sorry, but he thought Pop Step was being eaten by pressure. He tried to talk to her, and said she should stop worrying and just perform like she always does. Just relax, and she would be okay. However, what Koichi had thought earlier came true when she suddenly punched him and angrily said not to just tell her what she wanted to hear. In the next scene, we went to the streets. While Hachisuka was walking, she saw a post about a special reopening event at Marukane department store where Captain Celebrity would come to the rooftop sky park, and he would be accompanied by a host of local, indie artists right from the Narahata neighborhood, happening in 20 days. She commented that this looked fun, then suddenly her head twitched, giving her pain. She wondered what that was for and thought that maybe it didn't like fun, or maybe it pisses her off. She thought about why, and maybe it was because of that old guy's face. She wasn't exactly sure, but whatever. She knew how to make it really fun. Her friend with the low bun arrived and immediately called out to her. She had been looking for her to ask if she knew what was happening because their long-haired friend had been missing for quite some time. She turned around and said she had no idea, which her friend immediately believed. On top of a rooftop, Knuckle Duster was observing, and when he saw Hachisuka, he commented that he was happy to see her in high spirits. In the next scene, we go back to Koichi's house, and here he and Pop Step were surprised by what Makoto said about forming an ensemble. Makoto explained that they were doing this because one of the higher-ups at Marukane department store thought of that idea. Apparently, she said, he wanted young local talent to headline the program and perform the store's theme song. She said she showed Pop Step's clips to them, and the head really wanted to get her. It would be good exposure for her, so it would definitely be worth doing. After that, she played the song in question for them. While listening to it, Koichi commented that there was something old-timey about its sound. Makoto informed Pop Step that of course what she would sing would be an arranged version, so she would just send the audio files to her email. Pop Step started getting nervous and said the song was so sophisticated, simple but profound. She was muttering on the side again about whether she could do it justice, while Koichi translated what she wanted to say, as she wasn't confident but would give it a chance. Makoto was happy with that and said they would bring all the ensemble participants tomorrow. The next day, Koichi and Pop Step went to Marukane department store, and here they entered a room. Makoto introduced the group Feathers, an underground idol duo, where one with a white feather on her left shoulder introduced herself as Mio, while the woman with a colored feather on her right shoulder as Yu, where Pop Step and Koichi also introduced themselves with Koichi as Pop Step's manager. After that, Makoto said the others would arrive soon too. Koichi and Pop Step heard something from the idol duo, and it seemed they were talking about Pop Step because they were saying someone should call the fashion police on this bumpkin, and teasingly asked if she knew how tragic she was, so Yu sarcastically told Mio to stop that. Suddenly a group of 4 arrived there and walked through the middle of them. While Makoto was looking at her checklist, she said these people didn't really have special costumes, but she might get something for them. However, a member of the group, a woman with President written on her shirt, said that wasn't necessary. She introduced their group as the East Narahata High Dance Squad. When they stand on stage, she said, they express themselves through movement, so gaudy costumes weren't needed. This made Makoto think, but her attention was caught by a man shouting because of irritation. A band then went inside and the man added that the Mad Hatters were here to rock, not sing a lame jingle. The leader of the Mad Hatters and the president of the East Narahata High Dance Squad looked at each other after that, and their hearts suddenly seemed to fall in love with one another. The leader of the Mad Hatters started to calm down and blush, saying it seemed he had seen something more important than rock and roll, which made his companion ask what was happening to him. While the leader of the East Narahata High Dance Squad giddily said she wants to be pretty, which baffled her companions. After that, Makoto showed them the breakdown of the special ensemble for the Narahata Fest, where the tentative ensemble name was the Marukanes. Since they could see the infatuation between the band and dancers' leaders, she said it seemed there wouldn't be a problem with those two groups. However, She said they needed to think about how to present Feathers and Pop Step. If they put Pop Step in the middle, it would create the best visual balance, but she still had an issue in mind. Mio objected to this and said, wait a minute. If that was the case, they would just look like backup singers, where you added that Pop Step's voice wasn't that good anyway. Makoto agreed with this, which surprised Pop Step and left Koichi speechless. However, Makoto said, Pop Step definitely had an edge in terms of stage presence because of her quirk, while the duo usually just sang at smaller venues, and asked if she's right that they didn't have much experience filling up a large space. So she said they would put this issue on hold for now. In the coming week, she added, Pop Step would practice the song alone, while Feathers would learn basic steps and stage maneuvers from the dance squad, which surprised them, and the leader seriously told them their drills were no laughing matter. Afterward, she also explained that at the 1-week mark, they would continue fine-tuning and decide on everyone's positions before meeting up and putting the whole act together. Some staff from Marukane department store arrived and asked if they could discuss the lineup, and she also needed to check the talent list. Makoto agreed to this and said she would be right with them. Before leaving, she dismissed her companions and said she would just call them. She also asked the Mad Hatters if they could stay for a while because they would discuss the song. She then added that she almost forgot to mention this, so she said that the 11 of them would headline this event, which surprised them. In the next scene, Koichi and Pop Step returned to their base, and here Pop Step had received the audio files from Makoto. She immediately decided to practice, so Koichi commented it was good to see she was so eager about it. Pop Step said she hoped she could really sing in the center, but she was still doubtful given her talents. If she just bounced around there, she said she would look like she didn't belong there, where Koichi speechlessly agreed with her. But to show support, he said she could practice at his house if she wanted to. While this was happening, we were shown Feathers training with the dance group. The day passed, and here Koichi did chores while Pop Step continuously listened to and practiced the song. We were shown the idol duo again struggling with what the very strict president of the dance group was making them do. After Koichi washed their dishes, night came. He tried to tell Pop Step he was going to sleep, where she shouted wait a minute and to listen to her first. In the next scene, we go to Captain Celebrity taking down a giant movie monster on a rampage, a giant gorilla with an air of royalty about him. When it fell, Captain Celebrity laughed at it and called it Monkey Friend. Since Captain Celebrity's fights were always broadcasted, he said he had just one thing he wanted to say. He nervously said there were only 10 days left until the Narahata festival that he was co-sponsoring with Marukane. The key word, he added, was Narafest, and that's what his viewers should search for. On the street, his cheer squad started distributing flyers for the said event. We see Pop Step walking on the sidewalk, and here she continued practicing the theme song of Marukane department store. We shift scenes again, and there's only 1 week left until the big day. Makoto was worried here when she heard that Mio had been injured during dance practice. Koichi asked here if that was right that she was one of the Feathers girls, so Makoto pointed out that it was the mean one, and said yes, which made Koichi comment in his mind that she really went there. Makoto explained that it was just a mild sprain, so she might still be able to stand on stage after a week, but she definitely wouldn't be able to run around and practice. The president of the dance group apologized and said she would take full responsibility for what happened, but Makoto brushed it off and said she was in charge here. She thought everyone would be more pumped if she gave them assignments that needed to be done, but it backfired. Because of this, she decided they would just do what they could. On the day of the event, she said that they could put Pop in the middle with 2 others on either side who didn't move too much, or they could remove Mio and have Pop and you perform an ad hoc duet. Mio cried sadly and said she had worked hard to practice there, which made you feel sorry for her. Pop Step immediately said to wait a moment and suggested that they put Mio in the center. Koichi was puzzled by this and asked wasn't she the one who couldn't dance around, but Makoto said that might be another option. What they were talking about here was center stage, and if there was any position that didn't need to move much, that was it. If you doubled her movements there, that contrast between stillness and motion might keep the crowd engaged. And when things slowed down during transitions, Pop could make up for it by bouncing around to get the crowd's attention. This would give Pop and you more burden here, but if they were okay with it, then they would do it. Pop Step said that if she also had an accident there and couldn't jump anymore, she would just be a tone-deaf loser. But those two could really sing, and her true talent was jumping, so they should do what they could do. Mio was touched by this and gradually stopped crying, and soon she nodded as a sign that she agreed with Pop's step. After that, the dance squad president was happy and said now they would discuss positioning. The members of the Mad Hatters commented on the side that Koichi's girl was cool here, where he agreed. The leader of the Mad Hatters seemed to be frowning here. He noticed that the dance squad president had gotten a haircut, so he thought she probably felt responsible. He also thought about how he would compliment it, but decided not to do it now and would save it for after the performance. He told his group that they would really rock that act. However, he was surprised when Koichi suddenly pointed out the president's new hairdo and said how much length the hairdresser had cut off. Because of this, the president became sad while Pop Step and the band leader were irritated at him, so he wondered why they reacted that way. In a dark part of the city, we were shown Hachisuka reading the event flyer that there would be a performance battle featuring Captain Celebrity and local artists, with surprise appearances from guest heroes. While entering a building, she commented that if they would be given surprise heroes, it was only fair to also have a surprise villain. Behind a dark shadow, there was an individual here trying to speak. Hachisuka talked to him and asked if he agreed with her, and soon we were shown the appearance of this villain. He was muttering Pop's name, and Hachisuka suddenly gave an evil grin and said they would go to the event to cheer Little Miss Pop. In the next scene, the grand reopening of Marukane department store arrived. Here, local Inca master Haruzaburo Namboku's performance was ending. With him on stage was the host we all know well, the voice hero, Present Mike, who was telling the audience that what he's saying was his super long-running hit called Yearning for Narahata. After this, he announced that he was sorry to give this news while they were still pumped up, but the afternoon portion of the Narahata Festival, aka Narafest, co-sponsored by Marukane and Captain Celebrity, was over. He added that the evening portion of their entertainment, featuring guest hero appearances, would resume after a 30-minute break. He also told the audience that headlining the program would be the ultra-fresh song and dance ensemble from Narahata itself, the Feather Hats. He said goodbye after saying this, but told them to stay tuned. In the performer's green room, Yu entered to inform her companions that the afternoon portion was over and there were only 30 minutes to showtime. We were shown Pop Step here, very nervous while thinking about what she was doing here and how it came to this. Koichi tried to talk to her and tell her to just relax, and she would be okay there. But Mio immediately punched him and said not to just say what she wanted to hear. A beautiful woman in costume arrived and told them they all needed to calm down and remember their training. She said all the blood, sweat, and tears they shed there meant something. Koichi wondered who that was, so Pop Step pointed out that was the dance squad president. While the band leader was looking at the president, he commented that she was beautiful and called her his Cinderella with a bob cut. He said now only his guitar would stop her world. Once the clock stops, he said, the magic that transformed her would never disappear. Koichi suddenly commented that it seemed anyone would look pretty in the right get-up, which silenced the band leader and made Pop Step angrily say that wasn't a compliment. Koichi was so insensitive about these things, he still wondered about it. The Feathers simultaneously commented he was a jerk, while the president wilted in embarrassment. An individual arrived here and said she liked what she was seeing, which made Koichi look. It turns out this was another hero who I know is a favorite of simps out there, the R-rated hero Midnight, and she commented that youth was really a beautiful thing. Best Jeanist and other well-known heroes were also here. Makoto apologized because the facilities, being what they were, couldn't provide separate green rooms for all of them, where Midnight said that wasn't a problem. She said she liked the school festival backstage feel here. Present Mike entered the room and immediately brought noise when he greeted Midnight a good evening. When he noticed the accidental pun there about evening and midnight, he started laughing loudly, so Midnight silenced him while calling him Yamada. He told her not to call him that, and to call him Mike because he was Present Mike. Midnight apologized for this, but still called him Yamada while asking where Aizawa was. He explained that since this event was about the Narahata neighborhood, they wanted heroes involved in the recent outbreak of villains to appear. He also pointed out that unfortunately none of the really famous ones had come there. After that, she asked Present Mike if he had sent the message to him, so he asked her if she thought he would let her down. He said Aizawa said he would come if he could, which made her realize that meant he wouldn't come. While this was happening, in the streets of the city, we go to Aizawa's situation. He was talking to someone on the phone, and he said he was on his way to the event and hung up the call. He irritably commented that it was just a waste of time, and in fact he was still reluctant about it. He said he wasn't the type who liked to show his face in public. He asked himself, wasn't this event about urban renewal? And he commented that it wasn't rational at all, and in fact it was idiotic. If it was for the neighborhood's benefit, why didn't they just collect donations instead? He expressed how annoying the event was, and he hoped a villain would suddenly appear in the area so he could use it as the perfect excuse not to go there. Suddenly, he heard a civilian shout that there was a villain, so he looked in that direction. He grinned with delight, and while going to where the shout came from, he said whoever it was, he hoped they were serious about it. Soon, he arrived at the place where a villain was causing trouble, and it looked like this was the villain Hachisuka was talking to earlier. Aizawa noticed here that it moved as if it wasn't used to its massive body, so he also realized it wasn't born like this. He thought that if that was the case, was this a transformation quirk? Or maybe it was one of the so-called instant villains, and he further commented that this area had seen so many of those already. Using his wrap scarf, he wrapped up the villain. After that, he introduced himself as the pro-hero Eraserhead, and said it seemed this individual's quirk was running wild. While staring at the villain, he apologized because this villain would remain tied up until the police arrived. He could also call an ambulance for him, so he asked what he was feeling. However, when he observed him, he noticed that his erasure had no effect whatsoever on its body. He thought that maybe this wasn't a temporary transformation, and maybe this was really what he looked like. The villain's body started to get slimy, and because of that it completely slipped from his bindings. He tried to kick it, but blunt attacks didn't work either, so he commented in his mind that it was tougher than he thought. Since it wasn't transforming back to its normal body, he thought a good net would be able to catch it. He wrapped his scarf around different parts of the villain's body, and because of that it lost balance and fell to the ground. However, when this villain noticed he was near Marukane department store, he started mentioning Pop's name again. In a hidden space, Hachisuka spoke to him and encouraged him to continue. She said that if he wanted Pop's step to know what he was feeling, he needed to try harder there. Suddenly, the villain's body crackled, which surprised Aizawa. Soon, electricity suddenly enveloped this villain's body, and we were shown that it developed an electric eel quirk. Aizawa was irritated because he was blinded by the flash it was emitting. Due to the strength of the villain's electrical emission, nearby civilians were affected. Aizawa was thrown back, street lights were broken, and a blackout occurred at the nearby event, which shocked those present. We were shown Hachisuka watching this event from the rooftop of a tall building, and she was amazed because what it released was as strong as a bolt of lightning, and it turns out Teruo was this villain when she praised him. She also said this would be good data, so she decided to collect a sample. But before that, since the blackout caused panic at the event, she said she might as well inject everyone there with trigger. Suddenly, her accomplice in spreading trigger spoke to her. He said that as he had explained, this kind of action didn't align with their costs, and besides, they couldn't let the valuable test subject be taken away. He added that depending on how things went, they might have to stop the experiment in Narahata, to which Hachisuka commented who cares, and this was just a small hobby of hers. And she also said she really didn't like this sermon. A man suddenly commented behind her about what she said, which made her look. The man started walking towards Hachisuka while saying this was a big shock because he didn't think anyone liked being lectured. It turns out this was Knuckle Duster, and he pointed out especially young ladies like her. He said Hachisuka was at a difficult stage where just talking didn't work. He added, he understood that better than others, so they should just make this short. Hachisuka irritably asked Knuckle Duster what the big idea here while calling him old fart. Knuckle Duster took out a weapon that looked like a taser because it was emitting electricity, and he posed with it while saying she was going home. He called Hachisuka Tamao, which seems to mean she was the daughter of him and his wife, and he added that her mom was waiting there. Hachisuka asked what Knuckle Duster meant by come home and mom's waiting, because she had no clue about it. Knuckle Duster told her to be quiet while calling her B-user, saying that he wasn't talking to her, but to Tamao Aguro, his daughter. Hachisuka seemed to understand what Knuckle Duster was referring to, and she even laughed at him while he was about to attack her with his taser. Hachisuka asked if the taser was really Knuckle Duster's weapon of choice so that he wouldn't hurt a single hair on his daughter's head. She avoided Knuckle Duster's first attack and told him that his moves were too slow. However, Knuckle Duster followed up with a knuckle attack, and Hachisuka could only watch as it happened, causing her to be flung backward. She became angry that he was using his fists after all, so what was the point of having a taser? He replied that he wanted to finish the fight without having to use the taser, because it was top-shelf gear with high voltage and high amperage. One graze on a limb, and Hachisuka would fall like a sack of bricks, and if it hit her chest, it would stop her heartbeat. Hachisuka realized that it was just a bluff, and she immediately used her bees. Knuckle Duster asked if she was using her worker bees, the flying syringes. He asked what was inside them, toxins, downers, uppers, but said it didn't matter anymore because all he needed to do was crush the queen. When one bee attacked, Knuckle Duster saw it and managed to block the explosion. Nevertheless, he still bled, and the blood splattered onto Hachisuka, who was laughing and calling him a moron because the bees she used were special. She explained that it wasn't a drug, but rather bees with explosives in their rear ends, and instead of stingers, they had fuses, so Knuckle Duster should prepare to eat a whole swarm of bomb bees. The bees exploded on Knuckle Duster, while Hachisuka was overjoyed, telling the old man to be blown to pieces. However, there was no effect on Knuckle Duster, who even jokingly praised her bluff, which annoyed her. She said that only the first bee was a real bomb, while the ones that followed were just fireworks, empty threats. Knuckle Duster asked if that took a toll on the host, because Hachisuka could only make so many of those, and that bluff told him she had no more attacks left. He was about to say something else, but Hachisuka told him, "Screw you, geezer," and jumped down from the building. She told him to enjoy his lonely life and called him a moron while jumping from building to building as she descended. First fireworks, and now they would play a game of tag, but Knuckle Duster was fine with that. So he hooked his grappling hook to the railing and jumped down. He swung toward the other building and said it was time to find out how far Hachisuka could run. Then, we returned to the concert area, where people were wondering about the blackout, and someone mentioned that there was chaos happening on the street. Someone told them that the organizers were still in the process of figuring out what was happening, and they asked the people to stay where they were and remain calm. In another location, Midnight was calling Aizawa and asking where he was, so she learned that he had encountered a villain, and that was the reason why he couldn't come to the event and not just blowing it off. Midnight told him not to worry about the event and asked if he was okay. So he said that he had already caught the villain, so there was no need for backup, and he was just waiting for the police to arrive. There were apparently some injured people, property damage, and of course, the blackout, but the workers there should be enough. After a few minutes, information about the blackout and the difficulties in restoring electricity reached Makoto, so she said that the crowd would become rowdy if this continued. Midnight asked her what the story was because they could take over, and they were the only ones authorized to evacuate people, which meant there would be no concert. Makoto thought about it, and at that moment, someone called her. It was Captain Celebrity, who was carrying 2 more people, so Makoto had an idea and said it could work. Then, she instructed Captain Celebrity to run an errand, and he complied. Makoto said that the show would go on and explained that Captain Celebrity was just getting some spare generators to provide power to the place, so until then, they just needed an MC to keep the crowd busy. She asked Present Mike if he could do it, but he refused, while Midnight explained that they were just on standby until everything was okay. Makoto hadn't expected this to happen, so she asked himself who would handle the backstage if she became the MC. In another place, the dancers asked if the show was called off, so Pop Step nudged Koichi, but she noticed that he was no longer beside her, which surprised her. On the other hand, Koichi was squeezing through the crowd, saying that he was with the band. He said he was the guy carrying something useful. Makoto wondered what useful thing he was carrying, and Koichi said it was Pop Step's watch Macallet, which he had brought from home. He explained that Pop Step always performed on the street, and she guided people to safe places when villains attacked, which was basically her specialty. However, the other performers doubted if Pop Step could do it off the cuff, with one even calling it unreasonable, while she seemed to be having second thoughts about doing it. In the end, she agreed and said that was indeed her specialty. Makoto agreed with this and explained that Pop Step would vamp for a maximum of 30 minutes, during which she would explain the situation to the people to calm them down, and the rest she would just ad-lib. She said this was Pop Step's stage to shine on, and they were counting on her. Other performers also gave her encouragement and the dancers were pleading with her to do it so the show could go on. Present Mike and Midnight were among those providing encouragement, but Pop Step looked at Koichi, who was smiling at her and giving her a thumbs up. She called him a dummy and went up to the stage. In the next scene, we return to the chase between Knuckle Duster and Hachisuka, where someone is calling Knuckle Duster from the hospital, but his signal is weak. He explained to the hospital that he was on the move, which was why the connection was poor. Then, he jumped down to chase Hachisuka, but she suddenly stopped, causing him to crash in front of her. Nevertheless, the call continued, and he said that he could hear the hospital clearly now and asked how he could help. While this was happening, Hachisuka ran away again, and the hospital was saying they were calling about the condition of Knuckle Duster's wife. Knuckle Duster continued to chase Hachisuka while saying that the whole family was on their way. Then, we returned to the concert, where Pop Step took a deep breath before telling people that she had a message from the event staff. She explained to the audience that the blackout was due to a recent villain attack nearby, but they shouldn't worry because a hero had already taken care of it, and they were doing their best to restore power as soon as possible, so until the lights came back on, they should stay put. Then, she introduced herself to the people as the freelance idol of Narahata, Pop Step. She said she could be found singing outside the station or in local parks, and she asked the audience if anyone had seen her performances before. A group of her fans answered yes. She added that her guerrilla performances were abruptly ended, and this was her first real chance to have a face-to-face with the audience. As they could imagine, she was so nervous she could pop. She mentioned having half a mind to run to the bathroom, and not literally, because what she was referring to was her feelings, and she had already gone to the bathroom earlier, but it seemed the audience didn't understand. She added that they had nothing to fear when she bounced up, which made the dancers wonder what her point was, while Koichi responded that he didn't know because Pop Step was on the Idols Don't Have Bodily Functions Like Normal People camp. At that moment, Pop Step said she was okay, but just in case, she was sure that her usual cheering section had brought glow sticks and other assorted light-up goods, so they should bring them to the edge and line up the people. Then, she asked the other cheering section to move in a bit to create a path. That was their exit route in the event of an emergency evacuation, and if people needed to use the toilet or weren't feeling well for whatever reason, they should just follow the lighted pathway, and her event staff would help them. That was all the news she had, and she would let them know if she had new information. For anyone who needed a bathroom break, they still had time before the main event, and for the others, she had a song or two for them. The people seemed pleased, and Pop Step began to sing. According to one dancer, Pop Step's work was slick, and though lame as ever, she was cute. Because of the loud noise from Pop Step's performance, Aizawa thought the people were panicking, but he quickly realized that they were just cheering, and the event hadn't been canceled. The villain he had caught also noticed this, and called out to Pop Step. Because of that, Aizawa learned that the indie performer was performing at that time and asked the villain if he was a fan. He also told him that he could see Pop Step at her next performance, but suddenly he felt a buzz behind him. He saw that a bee had landed on the villain and stung him with a trigger, so Aizawa tried to swat the bee. He was shocked by what happened and didn't know if the bee had injected something or had sucked something out. Then, we moved to Hachisuka, who seemed extremely frustrated because she had reached a dead end. Knuckle Duster said he knew how light-footed Hachisuka was, and he knew those streets even better, so trapping Hachisuka in that corner was a matter of calculating in reverse. Hachisuka asked if Knuckle Duster thought that was enough to corner her, and at that moment, she injected herself with many bees. Knuckle Duster hadn't counted on her pumping herself full of strength boosters and steamrolling him, so too bad that he isn't able to run after that. Then, we learned that the personality of a bee user is a fusion of a swarm of parasitic bees and the brain of the host, which means that a shot of trigger weakens control over her underlying spirit. The mission of the bees takes less priority, and the feelings of the host, Tamao Aguro, emerge. At that moment, Hachisuka's bad memories about her family returned, and she said it was so freaking annoying. There were incidents where she wasn't allowed to see other people, was made to apologize to her father, and more. She now called Knuckle Duster Dad and told him not to piss her off, while for Knuckle Duster, this was good because it was their first father-daughter talk in a while. Thinking back, he said he knew he didn't do good by her, and he had no excuse for that, but he had reflected. Nevertheless, his daughter was still charging at him, and she injected herself with an electric bee. At that moment, Hachisuka stabbed him with her sharp fingers, and there was nothing he could do. Then she repeated what he had said about a taser hitting the chest, and told him he had plenty of time to reflect in hell. Knuckle Duster wondered what his daughter had done to him and what would happen next. He felt the shock throughout his entire body. His chest was tight, he was nauseous, his heart was giving up the ghost, and the shock was putting him into V-fib. He only had a few seconds left before the blood flow to his brain stopped, and he would lose consciousness before he even knew it, and after that, he would be dead. He also thought about whether Hachisuka had used an electric quirk, and it seemed he hadn't expected that. However, he didn't accept that it was an electric quirk because before that attack, there was a bee that had injected something into Hachisuka, and it might have been a small sample that she had collected while on the job. Weirdly enough, that was the same tactic he had chosen, or perhaps Hachisuka had improvised in the moment to match his taser knuckles, but using her electrode claws, she delivered the shock directly to his system. He thought it was extremely creative and clever, and he seemed very proud of his daughter. At that moment, he finally collapsed, and Hachisuka said that that attack had messed up her arm, and she told her father, "See you in hell." Then, we returned to the concert, where the electricity had been restored thanks to the help of an electrician and Captain Celebrity. Pop Step had been informed about this, so she told the people that the Narahata Festival, co-sponsored by Marukane and Captain Celebrity, was back on. The first song of the evening would be from the special ensemble of the Narafest, the Featherhats, and it was a remix of the Marukane department store jingle. The performer brought the mic close to her lips and began to sing along with the backup singers, one of whom was Pop Step. Some of them were still a bit tense, but before long, they all regained their confidence. The musicians were hyped up as they played, while the dancers were equally enthusiastic in their dancing. They continued singing, while Pop Step was jumping around, and the people seemed to be enjoying the performance. The performers were also enjoying themselves, and in the middle of their performance, someone said that even a whole century needed to begin with year one, with the original founder, but they were hoping to attract young people, and that was the first step toward a hopefully another successful century. At that moment, the dancers were teaching the crowd a circle and square dance because, according to the lyrics, when you're in that place, it's hip to be square. They were even inviting the crowd to buy and go to that mall through the song, because everyone was waiting at the Marukit. Because the electricity was back on, Hachisuka realized that there were no more technical difficulties, and it seemed like everyone was just enjoying themselves, but nothing pisses her off more, so she needed to crash that party. However, to her surprise, someone told her not to be like that, and she was annoyed because she knew it was her father, so she asked him how he was still alive and if he was some sort of ghost. Knuckle Duster answered that Hachisuka didn't need to be jealous because he knew she deserved the spotlight at the concert. He said she had just lost her way, but if she wanted it, she should go for it, and he is rooting for her. Hachisuka replied that her father's weird pep talk was so freaking lame, but he said she didn't need to be stubborn because no matter what signals the bees sent to her brain, she knew deep down that in the whole world, there was no better daddy than him.
Daddy, chill.
She responded that Knuckle Duster's act was becoming stale, and she really liked that body, and had even treated it well, but who cared anyway? Might as well use it fully and move on to the next one. She charged at Knuckle Duster while saying goodbye for real, and she attacked him using her bees as well. Knuckle Duster realized that Hachisuka wasn't bluffing, because she was using a swarm of real bomb bees, with enough voltage to fry her own body. Because she had used those two quirks on the fly without proper training, her body wouldn't be up to the task, and the blowback from the next assault would kill his daughter. He saw her eyes, and they were the same as on the day she disappeared. That chilly look full of rejection, and all he could do was bark like a cowardly dog, and he didn't even step up for his daughter and couldn't reach out to her. And because of that, Knuckle Duster lost his daughter. But that day was different because there were no doubts, and he would take that first step. Anticipate the opponent and counter accordingly, a simple principle that was seared into him by his training and real-life battles. He was the first to attack, but Hachisuka avoided it and tried to counter, but for him, it didn't matter who his opponent was or what they wanted. He blocked her counter and added that whether good or evil, loved one or hated enemy, he made no distinction. He said he would just step forward and attack, and he would get through her, and he was sure of it at that moment. While saying this, he plunged the taser into her chest, leaving her unable to do anything. In the next scene, there was a man who received a call from one of his customers who ordered their usual order of painkillers in the usual amount. Because of this, he realized that his customer had run out, and he advised him to mind the dosage because it could affect the customer. So he offered more health-conscious options if it was for recreational use. However, the customer told him not to tell him how to have fun, so he apologized immediately. The customer added that he also needed some chemicals like XXX, YYY for triangle, and for circle, which made the man ask if they were cooking up toxic gas or something. The customer explained that the concoction would attract insects because they had a pest control problem, and besides that, he also asked for a taser, which made the man wonder. In the next scene, we return to the fight between Hachisuka and Knuckle Duster, where Hachisuka had already collapsed. She was very annoyed with Knuckle Duster, who asked her if she was sure she should be talking, because the shock delivered to her had caused her heart to spasm, and she would lose blood flow to her brain, meaning that body was dead. Knuckle Duster added that Hachisuka could shock herself to revive herself, and that was the only way, because that's what he did to himself, but he wouldn't allow Hachisuka to do it, so he stepped on her hand. Knuckle Duster further explained that because Tamao was the host, when Tamao's brain stopped, she would also lose the ability to think. At that moment, Hachisuka's eyes rolled upward, and Knuckle Duster said that because she had lost control, the swarm would leave her by instinct, until only the queen without a swarm remained. Knuckle Duster was retrieving something from inside Hachisuka's eye while saying that it couldn't even fly or think, no better than a maggot, and he took out an object from her eye. He threw it aside, and he said that he was a nice guy, so he would bring back her swarm. He threw a smoker and said that it had a nice pheromone cocktail and a candlelight vigil to boot, while the smoker he threw exploded. Then, he approached his daughter again and asked what they were talking about. He covered his daughter's eye with a cloth to stop the bleeding, and we learned that he was the one who ordered from the man earlier. He had ordered a taser with a built-in automated external defibrillator, so the seller asked him if he thought the two were the same just because they both delivered shocks, and that it wasn't that simple. He replied that it was fine, because they shared the same battery anyway, and he just wanted to reduce the time spent switching equipment, which made the seller ask if he would use the AED after the taser and what he would do with it. He answered that it was for stopping and restarting the heart, and that's exactly what he was doing at the moment, while the seller said that's what he thought, and he thought Knuckle Duster needed to cut down on drugs. Besides using the AED, Knuckle Duster also pumped his daughter's chest while telling her to come home. He also gave her CPR while continuously asking her to come home because her mother was waiting for her. In the next scene, the police had arrived at the crime scene of the villain arrested by Aizawa, and they had handcuffed the villain. One of the police officers praised Aizawa and told him that they would take care of the suspect. They were making the villain move, but he was still listening to the concert above. Aizawa noticed this, so he asked the police to wait a few minutes, saying he would watch the villain until he calmed down. The villain was happy about this, while one of the police officers scratched his head. At the concert venue, you could see that the people were very happy. Pop Step was still jumping around. The singers were singing. Captain Celebrity was juggling some dancers. The musicians were rocking and rolling. Pop Step's fans were cheering, and the backstage crew was also very happy. There was even someone in the crowd who said it was better than they expected, while according to another person, the performers were awesome. They were praising the Featherhats because their performance was so cute, so they were asking for an encore. Aizawa mentioned that the performers were going all out, and at that moment, someone called for his attention. It was Tsukachi, a member of the Core Crimes Division, who was investigating events concerning instant villains. He seemed surprised that the villain Aizawa had caught wasn't an instant villain, and he said there was something weird about it, and he had doubts that the enhanced manifestation of the villain's quirk was caused by a drug. So he asked Aizawa if he had seen any syringe or injector on the villain. Aizawa replied that there wasn't any, but speaking of syringes, he had seen a bee, which surprised Tsukachi. Aizawa added that he wasn't sure if it was connected to what happened, so Tsukachi replied that of course, but it was intriguing because they had testimony from some people who reported insect stings during the mass outbreak of instant villains the other day. He said he would take note of it for now, and he gave his number to Aizawa in case he remembered anything. At that moment, There was a worker behind him who was playing with something that looked like a pill bottle, tossing it and catching it. He was saying that data was key, and the data on subjects was as sweet as honey. At that moment, he saw a bee, and his focus seemed to shift to it. "Thick and drippy," he said, and suddenly he disappeared, but came back immediately, while saying it was just like honey saved up in a hive of bees. He caught the bee and said that the mini was reduced to just one, or something like that, while walking opposite to the rest of the people. In the next scene, we move to Koichi's house, where Pop Step was watching the concert that had taken place. She thanked Koichi for recording it, so he asked her if she was watching the video again. Besides that, Pop Step was also delighted by the 3 fan letters she had received, so Koichi asked if one of them was from Shimazu and the guys, and he thought they always emailed anyway. Pop Step replied, "Whatever," because an official fan letter was completely different, but Koichi wondered what made it official. Pop Step said she would watch the concert video again, and she was even singing along with it, while jumping around, but as she jumped, her knee hit the table, which made Koichi laugh. Pop Step then asked if Knuckle Duster would stop by that day because she wanted to show him the fan letters. Koichi replied that it was hard to say because he seemed super busy lately. Then, he mentioned that normally Pop Step would say that it wasn't Knuckle Duster's business, and that was the reaction he expected. Pop Step said that was indeed how she was, but it sucked because she had to keep it a secret from her parents and the people at school, and there was no one else she could brag to. In another place, the Sturm und Drang brothers were making a comeback, and according to them, they had evolved their godly techniques to the next level, so they used their Hyper Tornado Strip. Just like they used to do, they stripped people of their clothes, where the first one flipped the clothes, the second one removed them, and the third one wore them. People chased after them because of this, and according to them, their passion sparked in a realm beyond pure speed, and they were the 3 Sturm und Drang brothers. They had already spotted their next target, so they prepared. However, their target jumped high, and we learned that it was Pop Step who called Koichi, who said he was the crawler who trips up in ne'er-do-wells. But the brothers just jumped over him, so he said correction, and said that he's the man who doesn't give up after a single failure. But he failed again, so he said he had no options left. Knuckle Duster arrived and said they needed to find more options for Koichi, who was surprised that he was already there. He was beating up the brothers, and Koichi told him that he hadn't seen him in a long time, while people were chasing after the brothers. They surrounded them, and Pop Step was watching from a building. Someone next to Pop Step said it was a heartbreaking spectacle, because why did they need to hurt each other when they were all just miserable prisoners of the same purgatory? He said he had only one desire, and that was to abandon everything, escape this confining earth, and soar in the bright and shining sky. He took off his clothes, revealing his wings, and we learned that his quirk was Swan. Pop Step jumped off the building in shock and called the man a perv while complaining to Koichi. Koichi replied that the man wasn't a perv because he just had a quirk that didn't allow him to fly without first taking off his clothes. On the other hand, the man thought that his flight was a forbidden one, and ever arrogant, he tried to transcend his impure soul, and the grossly incandescent sun scorched him, forcing him down in a brilliant blaze. That was his crime, and that was his punishment, so he was falling at that moment. He used his Icarus falling ecstasy, where everyone saw all his jewels, including Pop Step and Koichi. Then, he flew again and went to the rooftop of a building, before finally flying upward again. We learned that the Icarus falling ecstasy is a taboo technique that involves free falling from a great height, because it gets the man off while psychologically scarring any passerby. Koichi said the man was out of line, so he asked Knuckle Duster what they should do, while Pop Step wished the man had just fallen. In the next scene, Knuckle Duster was already behind the man, so the man thought he had become Andromeda bound by chains. So he told the monster that would ravage his body that his name was Desire. In reality, he was just tied to a light post, so he asked if things really have to be like that. At that moment, Koichi noticed something else, because people were getting agitated again because there was a man playing with his hands, which were surrounded by fire. He said that was the ultimate technique of his fist, because when his lust for battle flowed, he could hold anything without actually holding it, so he wasn't groping. In the next scene, Knuckle Duster had already knocked him out, and Koichi reported that the man wasn't on drugs. He added that the group of weirdos they saw were just weirdos, and he hoped there was no more trigger in circulation. Knuckle Duster said they needed to be ready for more anytime, because the types they were chasing didn't give up easily. Then, Koichi invited him to come to his house after they finished there, but he declined because he had something he needed to do, so he asked Koichi to clean up there. Koichi agreed and confirmed what they needed to do, but Knuckle Duster was already gone. As he walked away, Pop Step told Koichi that he could have nagged Knuckle Duster a little harder, so he asked why she didn't just speak for herself, but she said that would be lame. In the next scene, we return to Koichi's house, where Knuckle Duster had left his knuckles and mask. Koichi saw them and asked Pop Step if she thought Knuckle Duster had forgotten them. Pop Step asked if he hadn't just said goodbye in town, so why would he leave his gear there? According to Koichi, maybe he had stopped by after leaving and left those items. Not that that really made more sense. He thought that perhaps Knuckle Duster was leaving them a message to clean the items because they were already very dirty, while Pop Step said that maybe the message was to take care of them. Then, Koichi cleaned them, making sure that every corner of the knuckles was spotless. At that moment, someone called him, and it was Makoto who asked him what he was holding, but before she could finish, he answered that they were Knuckle Duster's punching accessories. Makoto said she had been hoping to interview Knuckle Duster, but Koichi told her that his master probably wouldn't be coming that day, but he would let her know. Because of that, Makoto mentioned that they always seemed to miss each other, and she asked if Pop Step was there, so Koichi said she was inside. Makoto greeted Pop Step and told her that she had more fan letters and some photos from the performance, which delighted her. While continuing to clean the knuckles, Koichi mentioned that people really liked the video, and Marukane was getting comments like, "Can't believe I missed this," and "You gotta do another show." So Pop Step replied that she wanted to do it. In the next scene, we move to the hospital where Soga was. He was watching over a patient, and at that moment, he heard her move. The hand of the person he was watching fell, so he stood up in annoyance and put the hand back on the bed. He was surprised that the person he was watching was awake, and we learned that it was Tamao Aguro, Knuckle Duster's daughter. She didn't seem to recognize Soga, who was still speechless, and she said he looked scary and that she couldn't move her hand. She said her head also hurt, but Soga remained silent. Then she asked him where her father was, and at that moment, he arrived and asked if she was awake. He patted Soga on the shoulder and thanked him and said he would call him if he needed him. Then, Knuckle Duster spoke softly to Tamao and told her that she was being given good stuff through the IV drip, so she shouldn't be in pain, and he offered her something to eat. Tamao replied that her head hurt, and Knuckle Duster said there was nothing they could do about it except let time pass. He told her to just sleep, because time was the best medicine. Tamao then asked where her mother was, which made Knuckle Duster's eyes widen. He answered that she just missed her mother, and she couldn't see her yet. Then, we were taken to the past, where nurses were rushing Tamao's mother on a hospital bed. At that moment, Knuckle Duster arrived, and his eyes widened when he saw the state of his wife. He told Tamao that her mother was extremely happy to know that she had returned, and he was very happy that he had brought her back. Tamao asked if she couldn't see her mother at that moment, so Knuckle Duster replied not now, but it would be okay, and she didn't need to worry because he was there. In the next scene, we return to Koichi's house, where Pop Step had brought something home while calling him. She asked him to open the door, so Koichi asked what was going on and what she was carrying. Koichi found out it was a bulletin board, so he asked if it wasn't too big for their household needs. But Pop Step said it wasn't for household needs because she was going to fill it with photos and fan letters from her show. Koichi said they could also hang Knuckle Duster's gear there, but Pop Step refused because it wasn't meant for that. At that moment, Makoto arrived, looking for Knuckle Duster again, but the two didn't pay attention to her because Koichi was busy putting up the trash and recycling schedule on the bulletin board while Pop Step was scolding him. According to Koichi, they couldn't always rely on memories, and sometimes he still remembered Knuckle Duster as the man of the house, in a way, but when he stopped and thought back, his master had only been around for a few months that first year, so even though he had go on to play the role of the crawler without him around, it didn't really feel like he was missing. Perhaps, he said, that was because of the strong presence Knuckle Duster had left behind. And at any rate, Koichi said that his fight hadn't even really begun back then. Not that anyone realized it. However, whether people realize it or not, time continues to move forward, and seasons come and go, as they will.